or pessimistic.
Okay.
These people have become the ultimate pessimists.
Well, yeah, of course, because they grew up thinking that it was going to be easy for them.
No. It's like everything's evil. Everyone's racist.
Uh-huh.
The world is pure evil. America is a Nazi empire.
Okay.
They view everything through the lens of pure evil and darkness, and so they're extremely just angry. But it doesn't explain where the anger comes from. Why are they so angry?
It's an addiction. They're addicted to that anger. It's like an avalanche with a snowball that's slowly growing and growing of anger in colleges and whatever, and it's running over the people that are getting
they
to
want to
college.
be angry.
They want to be angry,
Yeah.
and they're like,
Feels
"Oh,
good.
I can jump into this snowball that's just getting bigger and bigger with the people that are angry also." And so they're spreading that message. Come be angry with us. Let's go be angry together at the system that is trying to bring us down. It's like, well, you don't even want to work for it. You just want to be angry. Let go of the anger and do some work.
That's that comic where the guy's like, "I'm mad."
Yep.
The guy's like, "Here's a solution. I don't want a solution. I want to be angry."
Exactly.
They do want to be angry.
I know. That's what I see.
You know, I was told this when I was a kid. Some people, they like being unhappy.
Definitely.
They like it. And when I was little, I didn't quite understand.
Yeah.
It seems like to a child's mind paradoxical. How could you like not liking something? No. You have to understand the complexities. That negative feeling when they wake up and they wallow in self-pity.
Yep.
It's satisfying to them in some capacity.
Well, and when you come across the first person that sees that and goes, "Oh, let me help you. Let me be there for you." It feels so good.
No, I disagree.
How does that not make sense?
When you try engaging with these people who are screaming, they don't respond by being happy.
You're not engaging to these people like that, sir. No. I'm talking about that snowball. That snowball that's rolling down.
Listen,
they're the ones that are going to the people that are victims in their own perception.
When I have these interviews and conversations out on the street,
you are not that person.
Yes, you seriously do not understand the past 10 years of my life. When I would go down to these parks, when I was in Occupy Wall Street, and someone would start ranting about oppression and stuff, and I would be like, "I hear you, man. I'm so sorry that happens to you." They respond with more anger.
Okay.
Straight up. I was talking to one very high profile Black Lives Matter person.
Sure.
Who was doing this big rant. Someone tagged me in it for some reason because it was something I covered.
Okay.
And I responded by saying directly to the guy, "I hear you, man. I'm sorry about those experiences. Tell me what's going on."
Okay.
And his response was to condemn me and just go angrier times 10. I have been on the ground where I've interviewed people where they're like really, really angry, and I'm like, "Would you like to tell me like what's going on?" No, because you're part of the problem, screaming. And I'll be like, I'm sorry. I had no idea. No, don't tell me you're sorry. You're not sorry. They get angrier and angrier.
Okay, that doesn't prove me wrong. That's you personally. I'm talking about as a whole. I'm talking about the average.
They do not feel satisfaction when you calmly talk to them and be nice to them. They'll feel satisfaction when you cry and cower in fear and say, "Please don't take my job from me." Then they're satisfied.
But you aren't a victim. You don't walk around as a victim. It takes a victim to go, "Oh, I'm a victim too. I understand." That's not where you come. Dude, you're confident. I'm sorry, you cannot hide your confidence ever, no matter what. Same with me. I can't hide that. I'm a confident person. Hold on, no. You're a confident person. You walk up to that person, and you say, "Man, I feel you." They see that confidence. They don't see you as a victim, and they go, "You know what? That's a lie. I don't believe you at all."
That's the point. The point is
exactly what my point is. Yes, thank you.
That when these people are screaming, and then you finally come up to them and give them, what they're looking for.
Whoa! I didn't say necessarily you. I wasn't saying it like that.
You're talking about this behavior of trying to accommodate them or empathize does not result in what you're saying it results in.
Yeah, because it's the victims. It's the ones that group together. They're the ones that are like, "I feel you because I'm a victim for sure. I'm totally a victim. I'm vulnerable."
No, this is not what happens. The only way to actively function in the circle with these people without screaming is to say literally nothing or to cry.
You can't start this conversation by saying, "I don't understand how this happens," and then finish it by going, "That's wrong. That's not the way it is. I'm sorry." No.
But I'm right.
Okay.
I've been on the ground.
Agree to disagree.
I've covered this for over a decade.
Okay.
You're sitting here telling me.
I'm not telling you anything. I'm telling you what my view of what this is. You said, "I don't understand this." I said, "This is what I think it is."
Right.
Okay.
So when
Period.
so right now you're being the anti-vaxxer.
Okay.
I've got experience on the ground. I was embedded with these groups for years.
Sure.
And I'll tell you exactly what happens, why it happens, what they've said to me, explain these things, and everything I've seen over the past 9 years.
And your confidence is undeniable, man.
And I'm not even talking about myself. I'm talking about in general, when you're at a protest and you see a woman walk up to another woman who's screaming and she's like, "Are you okay?" And the woman goes, "Get the F away from me, you effing," and screams in her face.
Okay.
When you see two women who start fighting each other in a park, when Antifa fights themselves, when they try to cancel each other, the only thing that works around these people is saying and doing nothing. When they start screaming and ranting and they're full of rage, people just stand there and nod. And that's it. There's nothing you can say to them.
Okay.
They don't want a solution. They want to be angry.
But this is in Occupy. You went
I'm not
to
talking specifically about
so
Occupy.
we're talking about colleges, right? After high school, they get indoctrinated in the college situation, right? That's what we're discussing. This is where I was at. This is what I'm talking about. So this is what I think is going on. So you were saying that you went to colleges. You've seen it in colleges where all this is happening.
Like when Nick Christakis was talking to the kids on...
No. I'm talking about you personally.
Yes, and I've been to Berkeley, and I've been to Syracuse and a bunch of other universities while this stuff was going down, and I've witnessed this firsthand and experienced it when I tried doing similar things.
Okay.
And there's a really good example in Nick Christakis, the professor, who was accused of being a bigot because he said something about Halloween costumes, and they surrounded him, and no matter what he said to them, even when he said, "I'm so sorry, I agree," they said, "Shut up, you don't speak." And they yelled at him no matter what he would do. And that was a very famous viral moment, and there are many more with professors like him where you cannot say anything to these people at all.
Okay.
And they tell you that. Or the guy at Evergreen, when he's talking, waving his hands, and they tell you to stop waving your hands, it's racist, and then he does, and they all laugh at him.
But these are the people that are already in the circle. They're already indoctrinated. They're the ones that are already speaking out, that are already angry. They're the ones that are already in these groups. That's who you're referring to right now.
It's like a group of kids.
But how does it happen? How do they catch the new people?
Personally.
By the people that are just standing on the side, just shaking their head yes, and then they suddenly snap and turn into it?
Well, that's the question I'm asking. What makes them so angry?
And that's what I was referring to.
What were you saying that makes them angry?
Well, no. I was saying what brings them into it. Yeah, what makes them angry is they're everything pisses them off. Everything. They thrive in that anger. So what?
Bill de Blasio's daughter.
Okay.
Like you've referenced her before, right?
I mean, I only in the fact that she went into college looking one way and exited college looking like crazy eyes. I don't know anything about her. Who am I to say anything about her? Because that's the only thing I know about her is that she looked completely different after high school. And that she's now an activist in New York.
It's a meme.
Right.
They say college, not even once.
I see the meme, yeah.
And they show like people before college and after college. What happens to where normal people, and I know people like this, who all of a sudden can't stop and have a conversation because they're dialed to 11 nonstop. No matter what they do, no matter what you say, everything's at 11.
Have you heard the elephant mind versus the rider mind?
No.
I just watched this earlier. Really good little back and forth interview with Carlin, and it was great. And basically, what it means is the elephant mind is your emotional side, and the rider mind is basically being controlled by the elephant until you finally rein it in and you gain control of your more rational side, the more logical side of the human brain. And it seems to me that these people are, it's basically like the reins of the elephant per se has been, they broke. They have the reins in their hands. They're holding it really tight, but it broke, and the elephant is just running rampant. There's no stopping it. It's like a stampede. That's what I see that's happening. That anger is run unchecked for so long, backing off or bouncing off rather other people that are equally angry, making it more anger, and that anger just is getting perpetuated into this like hot mess, and that's what we're seeing. It's like it's so easy to want to be lazy, to blame others for your problems. People want to do that, especially when we're growing up without parents. We want to be a part of something. So you get to college, you're finally out of the home, which might not have even been a good situation. Boom, they hit, this crowd of people that, you're pissed off. Now you're angry. Like, I have to go do work. I have to like get up and actually do stuff, like whatever. Not everybody. Some people just drink their whole college careers, but others just get angry. So
I think it's specifically no parents.
It's maybe
But-
it is. I mean, the statistics don't lie. It's absolutely, if you have no parents or a one parent home, like I've looked into this now, and you're absolutely right.
I mean like weak parents.
True.
And
Yeah.
so
People, parents that aren't even there. I mean, what's the difference? You know,
Yeah.
if you're not raising your kids, if you hand them an iPad, that's not raising your kids. That's them learning and doing the algorithm until they get, dancing Hitler, right?
Yeah.
It's like crazy.
It's like somebody flicked a switch in their brains that can't be turned off.
Yep.
And they're just wads of anger and rage. You ever seen the video? It's called "This Video Will Make You Angry" by CGP Grey.
No, I haven't seen it.
He basically talks about how internet communities breed hatred,
Okay.
and it become like what's funny is because he basically predicted all of this was going to happen, and the culture war, for instance, and he talks about how groups don't actually argue against each other; they argue amongst themselves about the other group,
Okay.
and they keep exaggerating the claims until they've become so enraged that they're just wads of anger. And that, they talk about how video, and he talks about video and social media stuff, how it plays into this.
Mm-hmm.
So memes, for instance, circulate among groups about the other group, and they never actually interact. So I don't know, it's an interesting idea. But the reason I was bringing this up is because I remember that video of the white woman yelling at the black cop,
Yeah.
and the guy approaches her and he was like,
He's a black cop, right?
or it was a woman, right? And the guy says, like, what makes you think this is okay? And the woman's eyes.
Oh man, fervent. She was
Like-
how dare. Well, you can always tell too, because they don't start with a tone of voice like this. It always is up here.
At 11.
It's 11.
Always,
It's just-
always.
It's like they're on meth.
Screeching, like, you can see the heart is pumping, the adrenaline is flowing. Oh, you turned on me. I'm gonna open the floodgates of anger on you. And it's like everyone who sees that, who's a rational human being, is like, whoa, like you need to calm down.
We need to figure out how
You need
to
to have conversation.
I mean, I think there are ways to try and diffuse people. One of the challenges, going back to the conversation about the insidious nature of the far left, is that they actively try to stop any attempt by a person to break someone from the cult.
Yep.
You're in the cult, they act as like defense mechanisms, screeching with rage to shut down any conversation. And they literally do this. Like an example would be, if you walked up to one of these people and you actually started having a conversation, they would run up to you and get in the way and start telling you to shut up and then start chanting.
Yep.
You can see it, right? There was a video with Jack Posobiec, conservative, talking to a black man in D.C.
Okay.
And they immediately rush up and try and stop him from doing it. And I think it was Jack. Was it Jack?
That was Jack.
Yeah, he's
That
like,
picture?
he's like, I'm trying to have a conversation with my friends here, and they're just like screaming at him, shut up, because they don't want people to actually hear.
Yeah.
They don't want people to come together. They want to maintain that anger and rage within you.
Well, I certainly see that right now. It's like it feels like the left / Democrats, they're trying to slam home this division between everyone, and it's like I won't have it. Like I got these people that are, and it's great. I'm seeing people stand up. They're starting to look out for each other. It's like, no, you're not going to talk to this person like that. Like, you're the one who's wrong. It's like, even on my Facebook, this infamous Facebook tweet, or whatever it is, this
Facebook
post. Yeah, and it's like, there's people that I've known my whole life that are now writing on this, calling this guy out, for being wrong, and explaining calmly. And I'm like, these are the rational people. He was an emotional person. He was not thinking coherently. He was screeching at me. He was turned it up to 11.
There are people on the right who have turned up to 11.
Okay.
Like, I go on.
What's the ratio of people on the
on
left,
the left
versus
is
the
way
right?
more than the right.
Absolutely,
for sure.
100%.
Otherwise, I wouldn't be saying the things I do for the
Right.
most part. But it really does bum me out. Like I parlayed about this. Is that the right terminology? On
Yeah.
parlor. I parlayed. The Krasensteins are there, and they're
I don't know
like
anything about them.
they're just like
who are these guys? I keep hearing their name. I don't know
super
them at all.
anti-Trump.
Okay.
Really annoying. They're they were ubiquitous.
Oh, they're
ubiquitous
anti-Trump.
Oh, super anti-Trump.
Oh, well, why did they get booted off Twitter?
Because they were accused of running multiple accounts.
Oh, okay.
And they were everywhere, replying to everybody.
Oh, wow.
And
All
so
right.
they joined Parler, and I'm like, excellent.
Yeah.
Bring on more anti-Trump people, because What we end up with is a Twitter and a Parler that have their various biases in terms of banning speech, you'll have two different spaces where different conversations happen.
True.
Better than just Twitter, right?
Agreed.
But I look at the comments on this guy's post, and there's a bunch of conservative people cussing him out and telling him to F off and just really nasty things.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Why would you do that? You know, but I will say, you look at this is a common trope among the far left. It's called a right-wing love bomb. They understand and they hate it, and they refuse to understand why it works. They'll say, like, a regular person will get all of this love from the right saying you're so great, you're so smart, you know, that's really great, thanks for having a conversation, and it convinces them to become right-wing. And I'm like, yeah, well, duh.
Right.
What do you think? If I walk into here's how I explain it. I'm in the middle of the street. I look to my right, there's a bar with a bunch of MAGA people with Trump hats waving flags, and they're hooting and hollering. I look to my left, it's a bunch of Antifa people wearing, you know, masks with crowbars. And then I walk over to the left-wing side, and they go, "Who the F are you, bigot? What are you talking about? No, I'm in charge." Everyone's screaming. I'm going to be like, geez. Then I walk across the street, and they're like, "Yo, buddy, come have a beer over with us."
Yeah.
And then I'll go, "Well, I mean, I'm not really a Trump fan. Hey, no problem, man. Come on in. I'll get you a beer. We'll have a conversation."
And that's hypothetical, right?
I mean, technically, it's actually.
Well,
look.
Let me tell you, I am right there right now. I'm standing on that street. I'm seeing these people on the left that I've known for a long time, screeching at me, screaming at me. You know, that Mark's post that I did on Twitter the other day, or like last week. It's insane the amount of people that are freaking out about it on both sides, screeching at each other. But man, all the rational people that are coming up to me going, "Yo, props for opening your eyes." It's like, just that alone right there, you're it doesn't matter what I believe in. It's like a simple, "Hey, good for you." That's really what I'm hearing. Good for you. Like, good on you for furthering yourself, opening your eyes. It's not like, "I'm glad you're even here," which I have gotten, but like the majority is just like, "Good job. Like, I'm proud of you. Like, good for you, man."
Go into a like pro-Trump group or forum or post on Facebook or something where you say something like, "I'm not a big fan of Trump, and you know, I think we need to get him out of office," right?
Okay.
And the response you typically get, not completely, but typically from conservatives, is you'll get a response where it's like, "What's your problem with Trump? What has he done? Why do you hate him so much?"
Yeah, the questioning.
And then when you say something like he's racist, they'll be like, "What has he ever done that's racist? Give me an example."
I love that.
But hold on,
because I know a lot of stuff about him now.
Now go to an anti-Trump forum and post, "I like Trump. I think I'm going to vote for him."
Oh yeah.
And you know what's going to happen. They're going to they'll ban you in 2 seconds.
That's true.
So listen, I'll make sure it's clear. It's like a 2-to-1 ratio. It exists on the right.
Yeah.
If you go to say the Donald win and you post something negative about Trump, they're going to delete it. They're going to ban it.
I did go to that site, and I joined it.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I was like, I'm gonna see what this is all about.
So it is an echo chamber of Trump love.
Yeah.
But again, the reason I mention is because there's also r/politics on Reddit. It's supposed to be a neutral political forum. It is just basically anti-Trump. So
It's the Donald.lose.
If you go, yeah, seriously, if you go to r/politics, and post a pro Donald Trump story, erased.
Wow.
If you go to r/news,
sounds like Facebook.
Gone.
Yeah.
You go to so if you go to so this is why it really is a bummer. There's no neutral platform for these kind of debates.
Yeah.
You can't post anti-Trump stuff on the Donald.win. For obvious reasons, it's dedicated to Trump supporters.
It's the Donald.win.
Right. r/politics should be neutral. You should be able to talk good and bad about Trump.
True, yeah.
And then r/Biden should be pro-Biden and anti-Trump.
Right.
Instead, the supposed neutral platform will ban you for saying good things about Trump. This is the perfect example of what's going on in modern politics.
Yeah.
Typically, I just tell you straight up, I have been in tons of far left events and hangouts, and they do not tolerate dissent, and I've been threatened. I go to an event with a bunch of Trump supporters, and I calmly laid out my discussion about institutional racism, and they all were like, "I never thought about it that way. I disagree." And then we had, like I like shrimp dip or something, eating chips, and we sat there, and they were all like, "Yay, Trump!" And I was like, "Well, here's how I see these issues of social justice," and they were like, "I don't agree with that though," and that was it.
Yeah.
I disagree, and I was like, "Okay."
Oh, classic.
Who's getting the beer?
Classic conversations.
Well, it's because when you look
civil conversations.
This goes back to what I was talking about with the far left, the insidious nature of their tactics. This is why I'm not entirely confident on Trump winning. They cheat. They don't just cheat in terms of like, we're going to rig the election. They cheat in terms of discourse.
Yep.
Trump's,
Deleting anyone that's
right.
that speaks out. My video of me just simply going, I don't like the Democrats anymore. I'm going to vote for Trump.
Banned.
Boom.
Gone.
Got banned.
2.4 million views, and they went, better delete that.
Yep. That's spreading way too fast.
Donald Trump comes out and he goes, my fellow Americans, we will build a tremendous garden of heroes. Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, heroes of the Civil War. Everybody agrees it'll be tremendous. And then what happens? Donald Trump says he's going to build statues of Confederates. He thinks the Confederates are heroes. It's like,
it's crazy.
They're lying. They're making it up.
Blatant lying. I know. It's insane.
They will cheat. They are
I
cheating
100% agree. I think they're cheating now. You're right.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. We do the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. If you want to catch the full show, tune in to this channel, subscribe, hit the like button, or check us out on iTunes and Spotify, and we will soon have this podcast up for free on all podcast platforms. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all in the next episode.
If there is one nation that's been coming down hard on loot boxes as of late, it is the United Kingdom. Plenty of government bodies and consumer protection organizations within that country have spoken up about their admonishment of loot boxes and how they believe they should be regulated. And now the House of Lords has stepped in to add their own take, and they believe that, quote, Lords call for immediate gambling regulation. This is a report from news outlet BBC that kind of spotlighted some of the key elements of a recent report released by the House of Lords, saying that video game loot boxes should be regulated under gambling laws. The report says, if a product looks like gambling and feels like gambling, it should be regulated as gambling. You would think that logic is common sense, but the games industry simply disagrees. They don't present any counter evidence to suggest that loot boxes aren't gambling. They simply disagree with all the evidence that's already out there that makes it very clear that loot boxes is just straight up gambling. They behave like slot machines. They affect people psychologically like slot machines would. The report added, the government must act immediately to bring loot boxes within the remit of gambling legislation and regulation. By putting loot boxes under gambling laws, age restrictions would apply, among other things. Lord Grade, chairman of the committee, told BBC Breakfast that lots of other countries have already started to regulate loot boxes because they can see the dangers, which is teaching kids to gamble. Indeed, younger folks are more susceptible to getting manipulated by these gambling-like mechanics, and so countries like Belgium have already flat out said a while ago, no, this is gambling, and you will abide by our gambling laws. And so games like FIFA were eventually forced to remove the ability to pay for the loot boxes, and there were plenty of other companies that were forced to either flat out remove loot boxes from the game or remove their mobile games from being sold on Belgium entirely. Now imagine something like that happening in the UK, which is a much bigger market than Belgium, especially for a title like FIFA, given the potential legal and financial ramifications of loot boxes. Should the UK regulate loot boxes as gambling, EA would be forced to dispense with the gambling-like mechanics for their sports titles. They wouldn't be able to release the UK version of FIFA without loot boxes, and the US version with whatever changes they apply. They'd have to do it across the board. Not to mention that if the UK enacts something like this, many other countries might follow through with this as well. This thing might snowball into something bigger, and this could end up being a worldwide movement where most major markets deem loot boxes to be gambling. And once that happens, it would just be too much trouble for these companies to implement loot boxes in their games, and that would go with loot boxes falling under the purview of gambling laws. It would mean that they would no longer be able to label these games and advertise them as kids friendly. They would flat out have to say these games are for adult 18 plus. Lord Grade also told BBC, quote, that the Gambling Act was way behind what was actually happening in the market, but he added that the overwhelming majority of the report's recommendations could be enacted today as they don't require legislation. He makes a great point here where the law hasn't kept up with emerging new forms of gambling like loot boxes. That's why game companies currently can get away with saying that loot boxes aren't gambling, because the law hasn't caught up yet, but it's catching up real fast. Fortunately, it doesn't seem like it needs to take too long for the law to catch up. For some of these recommendations, apparently that stuff could be enacted today and don't require legislation. How much of that is directly related to loot boxes remains to be seen, but they're going hard on the idea of regulating gambling further and adding loot boxes under the umbrella of gambling laws. BBC then adds that the Lord's report is wide-ranging, covering the entire gambling industry, but focuses in part on new forms of gambling and those targeted towards children, aka loot boxes. And the issue with loot boxes is how easily accessible they are because they're sold in games that are targeted to kids and just everyone. Games that are labeled as family-friendly have gambling snuck in them. The report says there is academic research which proves that there is a connection, though not necessarily a causal link, between loot box spending and problem gambling. So it's more of a correlation than a causation, and Dr. David Zendel here explains further to the committee that either loot box spending causes problem gambling due to their similarity, or people who have gambling problems spend heavily on loot boxes. But he warned that either way, the connection was extraordinarily robust. So basically, if someone is susceptible to gambling you would find in casinos, they would also be susceptible to loot boxes, according to research, because of their similarity. Therefore, there's no reason to separate the two as far as regulations go. They should be regulated exactly the same way. The BBC article then adds that the Lord's report concludes that ministers should make new regulations which explicitly state that loot boxes are games of chance. It also says the same definition should apply to any other in-game item paid for with real money, such as FIFA player packs. There's a particular emphasis on FIFA in the UK because of how popular that franchise is in the country, and that popularity means that implementing gambling-like mechanics in FIFA straight up spreads gambling across the nation to adults and children alike. This is a particularly popular product that makes it incredibly accessible for anyone to engage in gambling-like mechanics. It should not be this easy for kids to straight up participate in gambling. There are strict rules about bringing kids into casinos. The same kind of strictness should apply to loot boxes as well. Now, the UK government told the committee that its planned future review of the Gambling Act would focus on loot boxes, but the Lord's report warns this issue requires more urgent attention. Basically, loot boxes are more of an issue than all the other gambling stuff because they are the least regulated, the least scrutinized. They are what's running more rampant than anything else because, again, it's gambling in family-friendly titles like FIFA. FIFA is advertised as a soccer game, and plenty of other sports titles are advertised as such, but they often feel more like casino games with a sports game on the side. Now, if you go to the official UK Parliament website, you'll find a summary of that report. Here is a post with a headline that reads, "Time to act to reduce gambling-related harm," says Lord's report. Scrolling down, you'll find key recommendations for how to deal with gambling in the country bullet listed here, and loot boxes got their own bullet point. They get very specifically called out as follows: the government must act immediately to bring loot boxes within the remit of gambling legislation and regulation. And some of these other recommendations are worth reading as well. Right here it reads, "The Gambling Commission should create a system for testing all new games against a series of harm indicators, including their addictiveness and whether they will appeal to children. A game which scores too highly on the harm indicators must not be approved." Organizations like the ESRB go out of their way to very specifically highlight the mature content that are featured in games, but when it comes to loot boxes, microtransactions, gambling-like mechanics, all they can muster is there are in-app purchases, which is so vague and doesn't really inform people about anything. The fact that they're so strict on mature content, but so lax on the gambling aspect, which causes legitimate harm to kids and families psychologically and financially, I mean, there's just a discrepancy there that doesn't make sense, except for the fact that these rating boards are lobbied by game companies. The key recommendations also calls for the equalization of speed of play and spin so that no game can be played quicker online than in a casino, bookmaker, or bingo hall. So that's another danger of loot boxes, the speed at which you can spend money. All you have to do is insert your credit card or debit card number and then just hit a couple menu prompts, and then you can purchase loot boxes en masse or in-game currency en masse. You can just eat through money so fast in these games, and that's what makes them somewhat more dangerous than some of these casino games even. So by applying this principle to loot boxes, they would have to slow down the rate at which people can spend. They would have to put in measures so that people cannot spend en masse at a ridiculous rate. Then right here we have a bullet point that highlights how any company that participates in gambling business or implements gambling-like mechanics into their games must consider customer affordability. The bullet point reads, the Gambling Commission must explain the minimum steps which operators should take when considering customer affordability and make it clear that it is for the operator to take the steps which will enable them to identify customers who are betting more than they can afford. It's not acceptable for companies to stand by knowing that certain people are spending all of their money on loot boxes or on gambling because they're addicted to that stuff. It is the responsibility of these companies to understand who they're selling to and how that's affecting these people. Now, these are just some of the key recommendations. Apparently, the report made some 66 recommendations total. Not all of them are directly related to loot boxes, but given that they want loot boxes to be under the gambling law umbrella, they may very well eventually apply to loot boxes as well. This comes in after other UK organizations and government bodies have spoken out against loot boxes. So right here we have an article from June 7th, 2020 that noted how ministers call for evidence on video games such as FIFA that charge money for rewards. The Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport will this week launch a call for evidence on the increasingly common feature of games such as the football franchise FIFA. Back in January 21st, 2020, the NHS, the National Health Service, called for a loot box ban. Here's an article from September 2019 that talked about how the Digital Culture, Media and Sports Committee published an 84-page report into immersive and addictive technologies, and loot boxes were prominently featured as a potential threat, a potential hazard and danger to children in particular. Back in October of 2019, the Children's Commissioner talked about how addictive loot boxes can be for children. They actually have testimonials from kids who play games like FIFA and talked about how they feel pressure to spend money in these games because of the grind required to unlock player card packs, because FIFA's loot boxes are straight up pay to win. If you don't pay up, if you don't continuously spend money on the game, you're going to fall behind. You're not going to be able to compete with those who do spend money on card packs to have the chance to earn the best players that you can add to your roster. And as a result, the Children's Commissioner agreed with members of Parliament who have previously called for a ban on loot boxes being sold in video games. Back in July 2019, the BBC released articles spotlighting how kids were spending their parents' money en masse, emptying their parents' bank accounts on all kinds of games, whether it's console games, mobile games, and of course, FIFA in particular was spotlighted because of the popularity this game has in the UK. Let's also not forget, of course, that back in June 2019, Epic and EA were grilled by the House of Commons, by the Digital Culture, Media and Sport Committee about their shady monetization practices. That's where we got the infamous phrase, we don't call them loot boxes, they're surprise mechanics, they're fun and ethical, all that laughable bullshit. So what we have here is a situation where government ministers, members of Parliament, and the House of Commons, House of Lords, they're all sort of banding together to admonish loot boxes and also to regulate them as they should be, because again, they're just straight up gambling. There's plenty of evidence to suggest that. The games industry continues to deny this despite the evidence out there because it is going to affect their profit margins. That's what it comes down to. Money over the safety of the customers they're selling their products to. But that's not going to last, games industry. The walls are closing in, and the government clearly has every intention to ensure that loot boxes aren't sold in the immoral manner that they are right now, snuck in to video games advertised as kids-friendly, and sold rampantly without any checks and balances, without any accountability whatsoever. The accountability is coming. The games industry can willfully choose to delude themselves, but it's not going to change what's going on here, the kind of movement that's going on against loot boxes from government bodies across the UK and across the world. So that's my take, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on the House of Lords coming down on loot boxes. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video, and wow, this is actually a pretty major one. So, the House of Lords, right, one of the Houses of Parliament in the United Kingdom, has basically just said, regulate loot boxes, do it right now. They've basically just said that. That's pretty darn major. It's a part of a far larger report that actually does cover gambling in video games in other dimensions as well. It's extremely important for us to talk about, so I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you find it interesting, and hey, your likes help, your subs help. If you want to get some sweet art as well as other stuff over on our Patreon, then you can check that out too, and it directly supports the team. So, hope you enjoy it. With that said, let's get stuck in. Well then, bloody hell, it might actually be happening. Now, this is all via the House of Lords, and basically, the first thing for you to understand is, in the UK, there's the House of Commons and the House of Lords. The House of Commons is far more important. The House of Lords is, I mean, in some ways a bit of a relic of the past, and it's more of an advisory body, you could say. I don't want to fully dive into the way that the UK Parliament works, but suffice to say, if this was a prominent thing going through the Commons, it would be a bit more important, but that it's going through the House of Lords certainly is important, and this certainly could be a major step in the process of real changes actually happening, especially because one of the things that they're saying is that this does not need to be a part of a comprehensive overview of gambling legislation, and that it could basically all be done right now. So, with that said, let's actually get into it. The House of Lords have basically come out with a new report on gambling in the United Kingdom. Now, gambling here, I don't know what it's like in America as an example, but here you could say it's a pretty major societal issue, especially with problem gambling, and a lot of that applying to sports. There's a lot of gambling companies, you see them across every single town and city in the UK. It definitely is a thing. And in their report, they speak of estimated 1 suicide per day and around 2 million people being affected by problem gambling, which is a fairly major percentage of the UK's overall population. Now, there's a number of things that lead into this, and one of the things that's a big concern is children, and that stuff actually kicking off from an early age. Now, this is a very wide-reaching report, but what we're going to focus on today is, of course, how it applies to video games, because in this very, very wide-reaching report on gambling in the UK, video games were very much mentioned, and in a major, major way. So the report claims, right, that there is a blurring of the lines between video games and gambling activities, and that is a pressing concern. And we can all see this, right? There are gambling mechanics in games, and the overlap between what you could say are regular core games and then casual games is pretty spooky. And when you go more into that casual games market, there is stuff that is a lot more literally feeling like gambling, as an example, on Facebook and on mobile. Now, a lot of these things are using the same tactics that casinos, right, that casinos literally use and betting places use, and this is where the government is getting interested, because in those situations with video games, they don't feel that children are being sheltered, and that really it's a situation where the industry should be taking responsibility, but that it isn't. And what's interesting is this report even extends to the same ground we covered in a recent video on what Bobby Kotick said, where Bobby Kotick was talking about esports betting being a major thing for just, you know, engagement in esports. And certainly in the UK, you know, betting on football matches is a major thing. It's a major part of how people are engaged with football. The football, you know, teams have gambling sponsors. And even growing up, when I was like 15, 16, 17, there would be kids who would be, you know, I mean, because we were all kids then, they would be actually putting sports bets on. And I don't know if that's a thing in the US, but certainly in the UK, it is a thing. It's a thing the government are very aware of, and they're now seeing a lot of those concerns actually being mirrored over to video games. And that is super important, especially because some of the most egregious games, like FIFA, are particularly massive in the UK market, so this really could impact companies. Now, the committee were told, right, that sports gambling's biggest growth opportunity right now is esports. And that esports, of course, is skewing to a younger audience, and that is a thing that was majorly worrying to them that came out in this report. And what this would probably lead to is sports betting only being possible on 18+ rated games. So, hey, I guess no StarCraft 2 betting. So, my young me betting in Naniwa in MLG probably wouldn't be allowed, which, you know what, might actually have been a good thing. So, there's big worries about the actual regular gambling industry moving into esports. But also, loot boxes were brought up, and I think that's why many of you will have been interested, even in this video. So on that, let's actually dive into it. Now, they credit Star Wars Battlefront 2 as sort of the main thing here. Now, that's not accurate, because obviously this stuff was done long before that. Overwatch, as another example of a game that, you know, had loot boxes right from the beginning. So they're not accurate in saying Battlefront 2, but obviously Battlefront 2 really did bring it to prominence. And they were saying that, yeah, it's not legally gambling, but there is a strong evidential link of, you know, problem gambling in children and the psychological things being done by loot boxes. Of course, it was brought up that the Children's Commissioner Office, or Commissioner's Office, already recommended that loot boxes should immediately be declared as gambling. And across all of the evidence and research that was provided, they think, via this report, what they say, and this is a report sort of, you know, it's trying to advise government, that more urgent attention and action is actually required here. And to quote them directly, right, they say this: "The evidence we have heard has stressed the urgency of taking action and has not drawn attention to any unintended consequences." Now, that is basically saying there will not be unintended consequences. We can act on this immediately. And that's really saying that we can act on this without having to also do a more comprehensive overview of gambling legislation in the UK, which would maybe do things like, you know, changing the scope of what the Gambling Commission is, you know, is actually sort of dealt with, what's under their purview from a regulatory perspective. No, they're basically saying we could change these things right now. We would not have to do a massive, massive, big, long process. And I think that's very, very important. So there's a few key recommendations going through this report that the industry should be aware of. First, their recommendation that regulation should specify that loot boxes and similar games are actually games of chance. Now, that's basically gambling, and that's something they would want to do essentially immediately. Now, this would likely actually cause loot box games, or loot boxes anyway, to be pulled from the United Kingdom if it was actually implemented by government in a way similar to Belgium. In Belgium, FIFA Ultimate Team is very different, right? They kind of like pulled the, you know, the premium elements from it because of how Belgium actually dealt with what that like is. So that could be happening in the UK. But there was a really big difference there because, I mean, Belgium, I'm pretty sure it's a big football country as well, but the UK is a massive football country with a larger population than Belgium. A lot of FIFA Ultimate Team revenue will be derived from the United Kingdom, so where EA could nonchalantly, whenever they pulled FIFA Ultimate Team from Belgium, say that this will not have a material impact on our financial results, I really don't think they'll be able to say the same thing for the United Kingdom. So that is pretty darn major. That's something we should all be paying attention to. Anyway, moving on. They next say that ministers should have the power to add gambling regulation to any activity that they view as being characteristic of gambling. So essentially, that is moving away from a very rigid definition of gambling and taking a view of it that, you know, gambling is gambling-like behavior. It doesn't matter that it's, you know, Great British pounds or some other currency that people get out at the other end. I think that's really more saying, as long as the person engaged in the gambling-like behavior views this as getting out some sort of gain at the end, then we can classify it as gambling. Now, this would mean the government would be able to act faster there. Now, it is the sort of thing where I'm always wary of, you know, more government powers being given in a situation of haste, spurred on by a lot of drama. Sometimes that can lead to power grabs, and then we could have a situation where just things like RNG that are important in game design, right, that don't involve gambling, you could get to a situation where, you know, are the people who will be wielding this power actually people who understand video games? I mean, they really credited so much of this to Star Wars Battlefront 2, even though that was not the first time loot boxes happened in gaming. So I do absolutely have suspicions in that area. But yes, for the perspective purely of loot boxes bad, we need to do something about loot boxes, these things would allow for faster action. Now, as for a time frame of when things could come into effect, it's hard to say. This is a report that really is focusing on urgency and immediacy. Pressure is absolutely mounting on the government to act, and the House of Lords has basically said we need to do this immediately. Now, this is interesting if you then bring it into the context of, you know, say of the current government. So essentially, the Tory party won the most recent election by getting a large amount of support from working class communities, especially across the north of England. And that's basically, there was quite a demographic shift in the votes that the party received. Now, when it comes to how they can actually consolidate that position, there will be decently populist moves like this one, where it really is a save the children thing, right? It's like, let's get gambling away from the kids. So I would say that there could be, there's the political capital there. There's maybe the political will to actually do things that are going to seem popular. Like they recently used the term New Deal when they were talking about an economic initiative. And I think when you're using language like that, there's obviously some theatrics to it. So something like this could, I think, quite obviously fit well into a government's playbook. So I think that is also worth thinking about, especially when they now basically have the big seal of approval from the House of Lords to act fast on this. So we'll be keeping an eye out on if any movement actually happens here. The industry will oppose this vigorously. I've said this to you before, but let's just say it was at an event that was the opening of a facility that was decently important for a games cluster. I was there along with my co-founder and a very prominent member of a very major UK game body who you absolutely will have heard of, had their fist up in the air like that, being, loot boxes aren't gambling, video games aren't gambling, right? I've seen a major person, very influential within the UK industry, say that, and I know that person's incentives obviously exist, and that's actually a person who has done a lot of really good advocacy work for the industry, so I do respect that, but it's clearly a position where there's people in the industry who have a big disconnect from the audiences who are involved. So you're going to see that really strong opposition to what's going on there, and that's going to be very interesting to see indeed. Now, you've seen some of those organizations really try to hammer home on parental controls and stuff like that, and that's actually where I would agree with those organizations. At the end of the day, I also don't think that it's the role of government to be doing parenting, right? But then there's also the thing where a lot of problem gambling happens in over 18s, and you just have this situation where, you can have an adult who does just get manipulated and exploited by a company. And, if I think about it, what do we actually want capitalism to do? We want it to provide useful growth and increase productivity. And at the end of the day, if sort of exploitative, predatory stuff is just doing that to harvest money into a gambling corporation, I mean, that's just a bit unfettered, isn't it? It's just not exactly what we really want to be going on in society, even though I'm somebody who, look, I want to play a game of poker with my friends, put some money on the table, have some wild banter, right? So I'm not against gambling fundamentally. I think that any adult should be able to do what they want, but certainly you then just do run into the whole thing of what is right in terms of principles, and then what is right in terms of being pragmatic and actually thinking about the lives of people on the ground. And I think that is where all of this stuff gets so much more nuanced and kind of beyond just quick takes of principle in YouTube videos. I think that's what's really interesting. And it definitely applies to video games. We really are seeing that. But then, there is just the other thing of government getting involved in video games. And in the UK, in the USA, I'm sure in many other countries, we've all seen what it's like when the government comes out and starts talking about violent video games. And we don't want that. We have been through this before, and it is coming up again. Video game violence, it's something that's really, it's a load of bull, right? But it's obviously a very easy winning point or, scoring point for some in governments across the world. So the more the government power is there and starts regulating games, you kind of wonder, is there a slippery slope argument here where that could just go in a way that we don't want? And, I just would worry about that, I suppose. There's always just that bit of me that's suspicious. So, yeah, here, really, what the industry needs to do is actually step in right now and promise massive change. And, instead of just saying, we have parental controls, people can do whatever they want, while knowing that most people don't and that parents actually don't, I think they need to start thinking maybe things shouldn't be opt-in. Right, we shouldn't opt into parental controls. Maybe we should opt out. Maybe that's one way of doing things for games that have a realistic chance of being in the hands of children. But whatever it is, the industry needs to be far more proactive here. And even talking about this from a pragmatic sense, if you don't want to get regulated into oblivion and you still want to be able to make some amount of money from systems like this, you had better find a way that you can run these systems while not having governments shut you down. that's just the only pragmatic way for the industry to actually respond to something like this. And as for how that could really happen, I mean, if you saw like a really visible effort to get the ESA together to actually, or maybe UK as another one, to actually get together and properly talk about how we're going to deal with this in a far more broad and comprehensive level, something like that would need to happen, but it would need to be more than just lip service to the problem. Overall, where are we left from all of this? Where are we left from this report? Well, the House of Lords is saying, government, you can change this now. This is a big problem. Already the government is, already there's talk of making it so that sports teams can no longer have gambling companies as their shirt sponsors, or, have Ladbrokes, like Ladbrokes Advertising, that's a gambling firm, near sports arenas, right? Because children can see that and then could get into problem gambling because, kids going to be like, oh, wow, I really thought Man United was going to win that match. Wow, if only I put, 15 quid in that, I could have made 25 back. And then it could spiral into something really bad. So the government's already looking at these things. These are all being considered. And now, yeah, there's a pretty clear, hey, go look at this for video games. This is going to be really big. Do I see anything happening in the United States for this? No. And that is a larger market than the UK. Maybe not for FIFA Ultimate Team. I don't really know. But yeah, certainly. I don't know if I could see this happening in the USA, just, because of like how things are actually set up there in terms of, different states, and just that whole system is very different to the UK system of governance in a bunch of ways. So yeah, I could see it happening more in the UK, but certainly the UK is a very major market, and I think if major change happened there, you would see a ripple effect. Look, Belgium, they did it, maybe a small ripple effect, but the UK is just a larger economy. And with, once that happens, then I've got to wonder as well, if we see Belgium and some other EU countries make their own moves, will you then see EU level legislation and things like this? And if that was to then happen, then it could get really quite interesting indeed, especially for the likes of FIFA, which is very big in EU countries. Let me know what you think about all of this down below. This is real major important stuff, so let me know what you think. I really hope you found this to be an interesting video, and you know what, it's very interesting. It's very good to see people's passion in an important topic like this, where it's not about fun, it's not about juicy drama for, who she said this, he said this. It's about like actual stuff that's pretty hardcore, really doesn't matter. So, interesting stuff. Hope you enjoyed this. Let me know what you think. I'll see you next time.
The last few days and week has quite literally been an explosion in new Cyberpunk 2077 information, news, and footage. I haven't even had a chance to really talk about the recent news that Cyberpunk 2077 has been delayed to November, a move that I find quite interesting. I've seen all sorts of speculation and theories, with many not buying that CD Projekt Red needs 2 additional months just for polish. The thinking is that the game was already delayed from April to September for this specific reason, with it already being revealed that the game is indeed quote-unquote finished, but people believe the real reason the game has been delayed is to launch alongside the next generation of consoles of the Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5 for maximum potential in terms of sales and profits, which I'm not going to lie, that does make a lot of sense. Now, I do think that maybe what's happening here, partially at least, I don't think CDPR is necessarily lying though. I actually truly believe that they need more time for optimization, polish, and reworking on certain features that are not playtesting well. We've seen that in some of the previews, and that's the importance of these previews that CDPR has put an emphasis on. They want to improve the game and make sure it's the best that it possibly can be come release day. Regardless, it's a 2-month delay, and today we have a lot to go over because recently there's just been, like I said before, an unloading on new Cyberpunk 2077 stuff, which came during and after the massive Night City Wire event, which of course we will also be breaking down here. There's just so much new details that we have learned, some of which that has blown me away, like the recent gameplay previews that outline tons of exciting features that I shall discuss later on in this video. But even besides that, there are future Night City Wire events coming, in which likely CDPR will put an emphasis on other aspects of Cyberpunk 2077, like maybe showing how cyberspace actually works in the game. Either way, based on the game's official website, it appears that 2 more episodes of Night City Wire are coming sometime in the near future, which of course I will be streaming. For now though, we have a lot to break down, which includes tons of new images that were recently shared by CD Projekt Red, some new exclusive footage, a trailer with some hidden stuff, gameplay details, and much more. But as usual, before we proceed forward, if you do go on to enjoy this content and want to show your support for videos like this, please consider hitting that like button, subscribing for more, and turning notifications on so you do not miss out on any new content. Also, if you don't already know, I am on Patreon. If you want to help out the channel further with financial support and gain some benefits, like deciding certain upcoming content, become a patron today. As always, links are down in the description below. Nonetheless, I cannot emphasize this enough, but the hype train has finally taken off, and as someone who followed and really loved the lead up to another giant release a few years back with Red Dead Redemption 2, I'm hoping it's just as fun and exciting. Anyway, first off, we actually have some news to go over. As everyone knows now, Cyberpunk 2077 has been moved to November 19th, and when that announcement was actually made by CD Projekt Red's leadership, they held a special press conference, or conference with investors, in which they of course went over the delay, but also discussed a few other interesting things. CDPR made mention of the previews in which game journalists around the world were able to play the game for about 4 to 5 hours. The build that they played, though, was not complete, as there were bugs and some key story elements missing. But as I've said before, I think the importance of these previews is that it is the true start of the game's marketing campaign kicking off. CD Projekt Red also did mention a few times how they are gearing up for the next generation of consoles, and emphasized that the game will be running on the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, and of course PC day one. And sometime shortly after the next-gen consoles launch, there will be a robust update made for those platforms, allowing gamers to feel the true power and potential of playing Cyberpunk 2077 on these next-gen consoles. Interestingly, the subject of expansions once again came up, but the specific question was a bit different, as CDPR was asked for how many story expansions they are planning for Cyberpunk 2077. As you all may recall, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt had Hearts of Stone and Blood and Wine, which were phenomenal experiences that arguably are equivalent, if not better, than a lot of AAA experiences that sell for $60. These DLCs were simply groundbreaking, but CDPR was said to be reluctant about answering this specific question, but did say that part of the marketing campaign, they will reveal how many expansions they plan to make for the game, so expect that news before launch day. Depending on how you feel about multiplayer, this will make you indifferent or maybe just sad, but it was revealed that the game's multiplayer component was also delayed because of the delay to the main experience, which does make some sense. As has been said before, the multiplayer component is coming long after release, after the single-player story expansions have released, which likely will arrive in 2021, but this recent delay could make the multiplayer mode set for launch sometime in 2022 now. My initial prediction was late 2021, but that might have changed with the focus right now at the studios being on getting this main game out the door this holiday season. In other news, CD Projekt Red revealed a new partnership with Secret Lab. As we've seen these last few months, this is yet another merchandise brand deal in which Secret Lab unveiled the official Cyberpunk 2077 gaming chair, which almost immediately sold out, which tells you all you need to know about the anticipation in the air right now. Besides these brand deals, we've recently seen CDPR further expand the Cyberpunk 2077 world outside of the actual video game, and what I mean by that is of course the surprising announcement that a Cyberpunk anime Edgerunners is coming in 2022 from Studio Trigger. According to a news release, the anime story will focus on a street kid trying to survive in the future city, and over the 10-episode story, he will become an Edgerunner, an outlaw mercenary. Additionally, this actually came a few days prior, CD Projekt Red announced Cyberpunk 2077 Trauma Team, a comic series coming this September from Dark Horse, in which a short synopsis of the series states that Nadia, an assistant EMT for a privately owned business known as Trauma Team International, is the sole survivor of a failed rescue mission turned shootout. After she agrees to continue work for an upcoming extraction mission, Nadia and her new team find themselves in an even more dangerous and life-threatening situation. So yeah, CDPR are definitely going out of their way to expand this universe beyond the tabletop RPG, which this is all based on, and of course the massive AAA game coming this November. Actually, speaking of the game's release this November, it was just announced that CDPR is expanding just a little bit of what everyone will get when they purchase the game. The new edition is a digital comic series, which, as I've said before, no companies go out of their way to give value other than really CDPR, at least in this AAA games industry. Most $60 games, you get the game and that's typically it. Maybe a pre-order bonus, but not all of this.
Yeah.
Now, to our final piece of news, this is actually pretty disappointing if you reside in Japan, but it has been confirmed that the game will be heavily censored in the country. A new report reveals that the Japanese version will receive a significant amount of changes. Characters that would be naked in the ordinary version will now be wearing underwear, and some of the content deemed to be too explicit has been revised. Severing body parts has also been revised, as has the amount of gore and combat. On top of this, all billboards and graffiti shaped as, fun body parts have been removed from the game. If I had to guess, many living in Japan probably will be using VPNs and or getting copies of Cyberpunk 2077 from outside the country, which I really can't blame them, as it seems much of what makes Cyberpunk 2077 a mature game will be removed from the Japanese version due to censorship. But next, let's move on to some huge gameplay details that were recently shared, and we'll start with something that may disappoint some because unfortunately, CD Projekt Red did confirm one feature that is now not happening, and that is vehicle customization. For whatever reason, the feature has now been scrapped. It was never supposed to be Night City Customs, but CDPR's lead quest designer Pavel Sasko explained to IGN when it comes to vehicles as a player, you can own different vehicles, but you do not really customize them. You actually own vehicles that have already been customized. You can find different vehicles that are already tuned up, but you do not do it yourself. Maybe this is something reintroduced in the game's expansions, or modders can add this as a feature down the line, but I definitely know some are disappointed by this revelation. Getting into some of the more exciting gameplay details that were recently shared, first we have this article coming from PC Games N, in which we have a confirmation that you can play the game, or certain aspects like Grand Theft Auto. So there is a Grand Theft Auto mode, if that's what you want to call it. And Cyberpunk 2077's level designer Max Pierce told the website PC Games N, if you want to go out on a rampage and have no remorse, then you have the option, and that's fine with us. Although, one really big thing that should be mentioned is that in certain areas, you're going to have a different reaction and response. So if you, let's just say, start murdering a bunch of NPCs in Pacifica, you may not necessarily get the attention of NCPD just because they don't care about that section, but you will get maybe a response and some attention from some of the local factions, like the Animals or the Voodoo Boys. They may come after you. But if you do this stuff in, say, City Center, where the rich and wealthy, the corporations are located, you may get a response from one of the corporations like Arasaka, and you definitely will have the NCPD coming after you and trying to take you down. Now, another detail revealed here coming from Game Rant is there's always going to be mention of if there's Witcher 3 Easter eggs, and there already has been one found. On the Corpo Life Path, it was actually discovered in one of V's desk, a game magazine which obviously has the Witcher 3 Wild Hunt on the front, and it has actually specifically series cover, so that's very cool. CDPR has been firmly against the idea, at least the game director has been against the idea of having these universes connected and having Ciri included in the game in really any capacity, but I think all of us know that no matter what, there's going to be a lot of Easter eggs, and we're already seeing quite a few of them. There's actually another one found which was mentioned to Nilfgaard, and there's actually a street sign in Night City which says Milfgaard. So, and I believe at one point in some of the gameplay that was shared, there's also a mention to a restaurant or a food place which has the name of Dandelion. So yeah, I'm sure just these few Easter eggs, there's probably way many more. Following the Night City Wire event, there's been a lot of hype, speculation, and talk about one specific character that was introduced in this reveal stream, and that was Judy Alvarez, the leader of the Mox, who also gives us an introduction to the Brain Dance feature. And obviously, a lot of people are in love with this character. I called her a snack during my stream, but Judy Alvarez, a lot of people are wondering, can we romance the character? And the simple answer is yes, but there is a huge but associated with that, because preferences matter in Cyberpunk 2077. And a lot of the previewers didn't mention that Judy Alvarez was romanceable, but there was one specific previewer who said that she was, and that was Alana Pierce, who also made the point that preferences matter, and body types, because some characters are only into girls and guys, and maybe they're into both in certain situations, but that is not always the case. And that's why a lot of speculation right now is that Judy Alvarez is indeed romanceable, but she may just be into girls, so that is just something that should be mentioned, because this character, everybody seems to be falling in love love with her, and some people, well, maybe there's some more replay value at least with something like this, and I think that's really cool, and I actually like the fact that this is a feature in Cyberpunk 2077, but something that I thought I should mention for all of the people that are deeply falling in love with this character already. Now, another thing that has come about since this huge Cyberpunk 2077 reveal event is some new gameplay. We'll talk about some of the other gameplay in a new video coming tomorrow, but we actually have this katana gameplay which was exclusive to GameStar, and I actually want to play it because, and the whole heads-up display has been changed up, but it's really cool seeing this katana in action, our first look actually at the weapon. You can see the blood splatter as we hit this enemy, not sure who it is, but we did just finish a gig. That's another side activity, and then we see that text message, of course, coming from Regina Jones, and then we of course get in our vehicle and drive through, I believe this is Westbrook. Now, in the Cyberpunk 2077 subreddit, and much of the community has been talking about the comparisons that can be made from the 2018 footage to 2020, because we do see some identical shots made in this new trailer, and it's really interesting just seeing how this game has evolved in just 2 years. CD Projekt Red has definitely gone out of their way to improve all aspects of this game, not just graphics, but you can also see the environments and certain parts of Night City have indeed been expanded. But first, we have this shot of Dexter Deshawn as we meet him in his car, and you can see just the lighting looks a lot more crisper. It looks a lot better now. And then here we have another shot of Royce 2018 versus 2020, Royce being the leader of the Maelstrom gang, and again it looks a lot crispier, I guess that's the word I can go for. And then we have another shot, Victor 2018 versus 2020. Just look at his tattoos, they stand out a lot more here in this footage, or the screenshot in the specific one. And then here's City Center, and as this is what I was referring to, certain parts of Night City have indeed been expanded. You can see that in that top footage, and also you can actually compare the heads-up display, even looking how CDPR has evolved that, because they went away from the compass, it added an actual minimap in the top right corner. I believe that's something that we saw indeed in the 2019 footage, but that heads-up display has been adjusted a little bit because the minimap originally was in the bottom left corner and now it's in the top right corner, and they've also added some other stuff on there, certain things like our level, our health, and other aspects like the items that we actually have at our disposal. And then another comparison shot, this is one of the more interesting ones. As you can see, a better look at the lighting, how reflections work, and the shadows, and things, they definitely stand out a lot better now in my personal opinion. And then we actually have this final comparison of Johnny Silverhand 2019 versus 2020, and yeah, Johnny Silverhand has definitely seen an upgrade, and facial animations look 10 times better now in my personal opinion. And this is actually the only other comparison that can be made, and this actually goes back to the 2012 or 2013 teaser trailer. That was just a concept trailer of what CD Projekt Red was aiming with Cyberpunk 2077. And yeah, I would say that the Psycho Squad definitely looks pretty close to what they were aiming for, and yeah, it's really impressive how far this game has come and how long we've been talking about this game and how close we are to release now. Now, a lot of people have also been asking and demanding and hoping for a radio station or being able to turn on the radio as they traverse through Night City in their vehicle, and that has been confirmed. That was actually confirmed in the specific Nomad image. And now diving into some of the previews, I'm not going to go into any spoilers, but I do want to go over some of the confirmed gameplay details. First, we have this Kotaku Australia article, and they note Cyberpunk 2077 does not feature fixed classes as such, but your first choice will undeniably affect your playthrough. Each of the classes have a distinct prologue that you'll play through, which you have 3 life paths: Corpo, Nomad, and Street Kid. On top of that, each class will have access to different dialogue options throughout the course of the game, although you'll only get to see choices that your current character can or could have made.
I don't want to watch any more of it, and just the more I hear about it, the more I want it, and then I just want to enjoy what I have. God, no. Oh.
What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from the Quartering, and in covering everything going on
Don't drop that shit.
with Johnny Depp right now, it's been an interesting reaction. YouTube itself does not like videos that cover this topic for whatever reason. No matter what I do, they're always yellowed, even though it's just discussing normal Hollywood news. So if you enjoy my coverage of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard's situation, I would ask, please make sure you leave a like and a comment on the video and consider sharing it out there. It seems to be the only way to get any traction covering this. And if you are also enjoying it, you haven't yet, I hope today will be the day I earn your subscription. There's a little red button right down below. Just click that, and everything will get better for you, I promise. Now, this is a really interesting article from the Hollywood Reporter, which is essentially a Hollywood shill publication, and at times they do some investigative reporting, but I thought this headline was really bizarre. Johnny Depp, fire your lawyers. And we'll go over the article, but essentially it wants Johnny Depp to quit. It's trying to implore Johnny to walk away from all of everything that's been said about him. Now, in my opinion, there's at least some likelihood that Johnny Depp was a bad actor at one time or another. Not like his acting, but in his relationship. He's had a lot of struggles with personal issues and things like that. And even today, when you just look at what's going on, if you just Google Johnny Depp's name, there's all sorts of things now, all sorts of new claims that Amber has made, holding her dog out the window. You know, all these things, of course, he is denying. But I don't know, if he was, under the influence, it's something that you just could at least understand possibly happening. I don't want to just automatically say, hey, because Amber Heard clearly lied about some things, she's lying about everything. There's also this where he had a very bad reaction after Amber Heard laughed at him changing his tattoo, which ended up, allegedly, he raised his hand to her, which he, of course, denied. But this article from the Hollywood Reporter is also deeply troubling. It goes on to say, the star begins his case against the UK tabloid that called him a terrible thing. No matter the verdict, he's destined to lose. If there's a single word to describe Johnny Depp's status at the moment, I'd go with zugzwang, which is a chess aficionados know to be the moment when a player basically gets cornered into making a move that will inevitably lead to more inferior position. On Tuesday, the star actor appeared in London in court to take on the UK publisher of The Sun, characterizing him as something terrible in the print edition of April 27th, 2018, online, in an online article. Unfortunately for Depp, this trial seems to be a no-win situation. And I think I understand where they're coming from. Ultimately, more bad behavior will get brought up. It will continue to carry on. But what is Johnny Depp supposed to do? These claims, that Amber Heard has made, absolutely has cost him roles in films.
Yeah.
So is he just supposed to sit there and take it like a good little boy? Is that what the implication is? Yeah, Johnny Depp is in a no-win situation because Amber Heard lied about him, and media publications didn't bother to check anything and just printed it. So is he supposed to just sit there and do nothing? Is that what he's supposed to do? Hollywood shill writer for the Hollywood Reporter? Depp appears to think that success is achievable at a proceeding that will last several weeks and feature all sorts of inside details about his life plus celebrity friends, including Paul Bettany, Winona Ryder. Depp is claiming that during the tumultuous marriage to Amber Heard between 2015 and 2017, he never actually did anything that she said. Now, perhaps Depp will play the audio tapes in an effort to claim his ex was in fact the bad actor in their stormy relationship, but it won't matter because there's really no reversing the damage that Depp has incurred these past few years. I don't agree with that. I think he could absolutely reverse things simply by, winning the suit. If he takes, $50 million from the Sun, that's a W. Even if Hollywood is going to continue to blacklist him, that's not going to change. If he just sat there and did nothing, I don't think Hollywood would have forgiven him, much like they have Amber Heard, apparently. Well, they never had a problem with her. This should have become obvious on June 26th when it was revealed that Disney was working on a new Pirates of the Caribbean, this time with a female-fronted cast led by Margot Robbie. In other words, at the exact moment when a UK judge was deciding on whether or not to actually proceed with Depp's libel suit after the actor's attorneys breached a court order, failing to turn over a series of text messages concerning the procurement of things he shouldn't have had, Depp may have lost a more lucrative role. A source tells The Hollywood Reporter that Jerry Bruckheimer would like to at least nod to the popularity of Captain Jack Sparrow's character in the coming film if the controversies die down, but at this point Disney is resistant. Depp is too controversial. Disney didn't respond for comment. So what is Johnny Depp supposed to do on the date? So your argument is that, well, at least they would have given him a nod. How much money is a nod worth? How many film roles will be replaced by a nod in which people will just remember? I mean, honestly, there is 0% chance if Disney doesn't cast Johnny Depp in this other Pirates of the Caribbean, that this female-led Pirates of the Caribbean is actually just a spin-off, essentially. A spin-off that I have zero interest in seeing. If they continue the Pirates franchise without Johnny Depp, I will never see one of those films unless something more concrete comes out. Because at worst, you could argue that they're both bad. They both did bad things. So why is Johnny Depp the only one that's losing roles? Well, we all know why. So Depp will pursue a favorable verdict and nominal damages, $50 million, according award from a trial that's underway in English defamation standards. In other words, where there's burden of truth is on the news publisher to establish whether Depp, meanwhile, over the next few weeks, amid international lockdowns, Depp will surely incur additional reputational harm from these prying court proceedings, the impetus for which was a column questioning J.K. Rowling's defense of Depp being cast in the adaptation of her work Fantastic Beasts and where to find them. It's hard to sue one's way out of controversy. Again, what is he supposed to do? I mean, you're not even presenting that other side. You're not presenting the reality that Johnny Depp is clearly blacklisted. All of the things that will be said by Johnny Depp, or I'm sorry, by Amber Heard during all of this, by the way, can be refuted and will be refuted. I'm not sure that there's anything else that Amber could say about Johnny that hasn't already been said.
Yeah,
so I just don't see this. I don't see this as a no-win situation for him. I see this as the only.
Well, I mean, they
only
try to change
option
it up, like
that
adding
he
new
has.
characters and all that.
Because what else is he supposed to do? He has to discredit these things. And maybe the author of this article is right, that Hollywood isn't going to forgive him anyway. But they don't say that. They go on to say, on July
wanna share
7th,
with
Depp
me?
took himself to the stand and said that all sorts of bad things about Amber Heard and disavowed everything. It's not a case about money, it's a case about vindication. Well, Johnny Depp is probably close to a billionaire, so that's probably true. Depp, in fighting this battle against an unflattering headline, is merely going to draw more attention to the Sun's accusations, especially once Heard gets on the stand. At the end of it all, no matter what happens, the trial will likely do nothing to tamp down the controversies that have tarnished his career. Maybe you're right. But Eric Gardner with a Q, maybe you're right.
No.
But see, it seems like you want him to just sit there and be a good little boy and be canceled. Maybe Hollywood won't cast him. Okay. Maybe he won't win this suit. But you know what? I have a lot of respect. Oop, my cat just laid on the keyboard. I have a lot of respect for Johnny Depp standing up against this. Because at minimum, you could argue that the Sun didn't have any evidence of it at the time. And they printed
you're
it
talking
anyway.
about the stream deck?
You can also argue that
The one where,
it
like,
absolutely cost him film roles. So are we, the people, supposed to just let people print lies about us and just
that could help,
take it
yeah.
for what it is because, well, we're not going to change any minds, so just sit there and take it and let these articles print vile lies about you. I guess somebody working for the Hollywood Reporter would say that, wouldn't they? He goes on to say, he's elevated tabloid columnist random musing into something that is going to be covered by serious news outlets for weeks, months, and years on end. First of all, it won't be covered for years on end. Probably not even months on end. You probably take yourself a little bit too seriously. I think Johnny Depp will at minimum establish that Amber Heard is not exactly the damsel in distress she plans to be, and that might be his plan all along. Does he want to take down the Sun? That would be great. Have another tabloid shut down for printing lies. It's happened before. Just ask Gawker. Hulk Hogan took them down, didn't he? So it's not like there isn't precedent for this. He goes on to say, for that, Johnny Depp should regain his senses and fire his lawyers. Vindication ain't possible.
Despite the fact that my original formal review of the thing was very uncharacteristically short for an A+ Vox video, I championed the original.
And that's true. That's the problem with winning a defamation or a libel suit.
Combined with the tedium of having to like tape your own printed out icons over the keys and things like that to figure out what the heck your macros even do, and the lack of nested folders and things like that really made those start to seem less and less like viable options.
Let's say it happened to me.
Compared to the Stream Deck, even if at the time I was originally saying that I was keeping those around. Over the past couple years, I've transitioned away from my entire desk being covered in macros and keypads and gadgets to mainly just having a couple Stream Decks and I have a Loop Deck Plus for photo editing that stays kind of off out of the way, other than specifically when I'm photo editing. I have transitioned all of my custom macro programmable stuff from my other keypads onto the Stream Deck, and I was originally, before the XL came out, just using different pages to cycle between, because I had a smart profile for Premiere, which required like 3 or 4 different smart pages for Premiere, and so I just have little icons to switch between them so that every time I open Premiere, it would automatically open these shortcuts, which is a cool feature of the software. And so there's a lot you can do with it, and it starts to be much more compelling compared to competing offers, unless your entire focus is purely on saving cost. Originally, that was my focus. I was worried about, doing it for as cheap as possible and jerry-rigging all the things. But over time, the efficiency and the actual productivity aspects became way more important to me and my workflow, and that's something to consider for yourself as well. So the original Stream Deck is a small 15-key programmable keypad that comes with a little stand that has adjustable angles, and then you have a non-detachable cable. So that was a complaint that I had, along with it not having enough keys. And another complaint that I had, or that other people had, was that the keys themselves had a whole lot of glare and you could not see them at certain angles. And then some people complained about them being mushy. I never really cared about the mushiness aspect, but I did have issue, especially with my ceiling fan right behind me going, not being able to see the keys at certain angles. And if I rotate it here, you can see how these keys really pick up the light. I do feel like they're more clicky than they used to be, which is a good thing, I guess. And either between the way that the stand it comes with is set up, because you can either set it flat like this, or it comes with a magnetized detachable stand on it, the angle that it specifically uses avoids a lot more glare compared to my original Stream Deck, which is definitely a win-win for me. It has quite a bit more weight, so it's definitely going to stay in place, and it has a detachable USB Type-C cable. And this does use USB 3.0, a bigger display with more running on it, because this is basically like a separate monitor that the software just knows what to output to. It's one giant monitor beneath all these keys. You need the bigger bandwidth of USB 3, but since it is detachable and it is USB-C, you have the flexibility to use whichever USB-C Type 3 or USB 3 Type-C cable you have for extra length, or for running it in certain places, or just using your own cable, which is definitely a win for me. Again, I would have loved to see additional mounting options for more standardized, production mounting, quarter 20 threaded tap in the back, clamping points or something like that, but I'll take what I can get. Now, something interesting here is I actually discovered after my original coverage of the Elgato Stream Deck that this wasn't entirely an original product, and this is not uncommon for the gaming branded companies to do this, is that they find what's called an ODM, or original design manufacturer, that makes something kind of niche or specific that isn't really meant to be sold on a mainstream market. It's more made for other people to slap their label on, and they either just slap their label on or they develop it further for their specific market. And Elgato did the latter. The original Stream Deck was actually a rebranded product that was originally from a company called Infinitron. So I originally had a segment here talking about how the Stream Deck came to be as a result of a form of rebranding another product and then further developing it over time. This is something based on information I've tried to gather over time using a company called Infiniton, who makes and sells, or at least sold at one point in time, a literal exact Stream Deck with their own software and things like that. It was my original understanding that this was the original manufacturer of the device, and Elgato simply licensed or purchased or whatever the hardware from it, which happens over time. However, I can't get concrete details on this, and it has, as I dig further, I'm not 100% certain this is the case. However, this is still a pro point for Elgato, and I'm going to include the rest of the clip, but I can't really get exact 100% confirmation whether Elgato completely, originally designed the Stream Deck or not. There was, of course, another keyboard, I believe, called the Olympus, which was a similar design and a full-sized keyboard, and Infiniton released their own thing very similarly, but they could have simply taken the design or taken the products from the same manufacturer and that Elgato used, the OEM, and simply sold them themselves. So this is a very pro Elgato, in Elgato's favor point, but I can't get the details 100% correct, and I just don't want to say something that would be misleading, I guess. And they had their own line of them. They even had a white one, which was pretty cool looking, and it looked very similar, but their software was very Spartan and very underdeveloped. And Elgato took that product and their core software and really developed it a lot further, releasing a lot of updates and really taking the software so much in a better direction.
Jesus Christ. This thing could be good. If I can make it work with, let's see.
Hello, it's for the digital DJ tips extra box to take into the DJ booth with them, and then they can a pretty good improvement on the old type behavior. So this is the main section, this is the main thing that's new, but also the looping now has very clear displays of how big an area you're looping. Holding down shift will move the loop around the tune, which is nice. Hot cues are very, very similar to what you'd expect. Holding down shift will get rid of them. You can change the flux button to be switching in cues 5 to 8 if you'd rather have that, but otherwise flux is quite good because it just plays the track on underneath while you're messing around. Track's still there playing underneath. That works with the loop as well. So that's quite nice. Apart from that, everything is as you would expect it, you know, nice bright lights for play, pause, cue and so on. This effects section, extremely conventional, exactly as you'd find on the previous model and also on most DJ controllers. And there you have it, that's a quick look at some of the functions of the new Tractor Control X1. You know, I think this is a good update. I would like to have seen it work with the Tractor DJ app for iOS. On the renderings on the box, there's a little power supply on the back here which hasn't made it into this, so I suspect they wanted that to happen, but for some reason it didn't. And as I said earlier, there's a few functions missing that I think some people might miss. There's also a really annoying function where just touching this knob here switches it, like as in literally touching it, switches it to library view. Luckily you can turn that off in the preferences. There's a whole preference page to let you set this up exactly as you wish. You can set these touch strips up so that they're working in different ways as well. Overall, great upgrade. You know, it's a no-brainer for anyone looking for adding the Tractor Control X1 to their decks. The touch strip would be of less use to a DVS DJ than to everyone else, but you know, as a backup controller, even for a DVS guy, it's possible to DJ easily with 2 full track decks with just this little audio card and a laptop. True modular and true minimal DJing. So there you have it, the Tractor Control X1 Mark II. The full review, which goes into a lot more detail, as always, is on digitaldjtips.com.
Future Bay. Maybe this one will be good. This expansion is only that'll help. It's like it's a pack of sounds, basically. Okay. I'll do this. Yeah. Massive. $150. Jesus. All right. Alright, I sent it.
Heavy bass.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a demo. Well, not a demo, but like songs that they made with it. I guess it's a demo. But okay. I think I'm done with that.
direction with regards to macro support. They've enabled F13 through F24 keys. You can do a whole lot with the macros now, and they even have an app store, so you can add extra customizations that aren't built in or extra integrations for apps like vMix or Voice Mod or Philips Hue, certain games, things like the little Nano Leaf LED panels. And then they added native integrations for OBS, Streamlabs OBS, XSplit, actions on YouTube, Twitch, or Streamlabs or Twitter. I have a whole list here. There's a lot of stuff. There's a built-in soundboard now, support for Mixer. You can control your Elgato key lights. You can control your stream decks themselves, like the brightness and the pages and stuff. You can control that from other stream decks. There is a lot of functionality they built into it. And then as far as I've been able to tell, the Elgato Stream Deck Mini isn't a remake of anything. Like, I haven't seen the original product of what that is. But what they were really hyped about was with the Stream Deck XL. This is fully custom from Elgato. They even made their own custom actual chip that runs on it, and they were super stoked for that. And that's really cool to see, is that they took something, because a lot of companies take a product from another company that sort of meets their needs and then just resell it and move along, like Razer with their capture cards, which I will be covering soon. Elgato took it, rebranded it, redeveloped it further specifically for their niche, and now have developed their own spin-off completely of their own doing, and still integrated that into the software, being a completely different device, and really have gone pretty far with this. So that is something that I think is noteworthy with regards to Elgato's kind of investment in the streaming community. They started basically as a capture card company and have really gone all in on trying to provide what streamers need. So honestly, it's pretty cool. I did want to note with regards to other differences between the XL and the base one, is I have noticed that there's a little bit of a color temperature and contrast difference in the screen on the XL versus the original Stream Deck. And at first I thought that this one was looking a little bit too yellow or something, but it looks like the original Stream Deck, or at least my specific unit that I was comparing, is very blue focused with regards to the screen's color temperature, because this is a screen underneath it like any other. There's color temperatures, there's contrast, there's sharpness, there's all those little details. And so there is a color temperature difference, but the more I look at it, the more I think the original Stream Deck, or at least again mine, was way too blue focused, but it also had a lot more contrast and or saturation that the Stream Deck XL doesn't have. And I've reached out to Elgato, and this is something that they can totally control and tweak on a lower level software side on their end. So they will probably release a software update at some point if they deem it's important enough to kind of make them look a little closer. This is not a direct problem per se. This is more something that you only notice if you have the two side by side. Like if I just picked this up on its own, I would have never really noticed, but it's something that having the two next to each other, especially when I originally copied the same profiles, and so I had the same icons on both, I quickly noticed that they didn't look quite exactly the same. Gonna be nitpicky for somebody, but it is something that they can fix, and they probably will fix. So yeah, I don't have much more to say. This product is expensive, of course. It is quite the investment, but it is one of the best investments that you could probably make, and I truly believe this. This isn't, I'm not sponsored, no one's seen this before it is posted. It was sent to me for review early, and then I ended up not getting to take a look at it early because I was busy at DreamHack, and people already made the videos, so my incentive to like rush something out was very much gone. But you know, this is truly my belief, and I have Stream Decks everywhere in all of my setups. I have two Stream Decks on my main video editing and gaming streaming setup. I have a third Stream Deck on my workbench PC where I do my PC building streams and things like that, and then I have a Stream Deck Mini here in my retro game room streaming setup where I only need a couple scenes to swap really quickly. The Stream Deck Mini is a perfect fit for that, and so I will be slotting out at least one of my main PC Stream Decks with the XL, and I've completely moved from my other macro keypads, and I truly believe that this is one of the best investments you can make for your stream or content creation workflow in terms of efficiency. And if you haven't even started looking into the world of efficiency improvements with regards to your workflow for video production, live streaming, things like that, there's a big world out there. There is a lot to conquer, and something like this is a great starting point, but it is expensive, and you should definitely have a decent microphone of some sort so people can hear you and not sound like, oh, you know, total garbage before you start buying something like this. But I think it's worth it. IMO. It is. I think Elgato's really outdone themselves here, I think. So I wanted to add this bit into the video. It was a little bit of an unexpected addition. I don't personally believe in the concept of defending products, as I don't, you know, companies aren't your friend. It's not their job to it's not your job to protect them or anything like that. But I do feel sometimes that anti-product sentiment comes from a lack of understanding, and I seek to educate and make sure that it's clear. So with the conversation, this came up on my Discord server about normal macro keypads or just like, you know, little keyboards versus what the Stream Deck is. You have to consider its use case. You have to have a use case to use it for in order to really be able to imagine how you might be able to use it. You can't just buy it and hope that it will change your life. Please don't do that. You have to, you know, you have to have a reason and see why it would be useful for you in the first place. But the argument is frequently made that you don't need the fancy screen behind the keys, and they could just make a keyboard and be good to go. And you're not entirely wrong. They could just make a normal manual keypad, tie it to their software, and you're good to go. I do still personally argue, from my 2 years of manually cutting out labels for my own macro keypads and programming them manually and all of that, that the convenience factor, especially if you end up changing your macros at any, you know, amount of frequency, that convenience factor of having the instant access screen change is definitely worth it. But the the actual quantity and even arguably quality of macros and actions that you get on something like the Stream Deck with a screen behind it versus no screen, when you take away the screen, you're literally sacrificing 99.9% of what you can do. Because on the surface, the Stream Deck XL has 36 keys or however many it has. I forgot how many already. It has, you know, X number of keys, and that is all the actions you get pretty much with manual lettering. Now you could set it up where you hold the button to get a second layer and all of that. That gets a lot more tedious to set up, but you lose smart profiles. You lose pages and folders and nested folders because you can have pretty much unlimited actions at your fingertips and all of them changing based on what program is open and things like that on the Stream Deck as is. But without the screen behind it, you essentially lose that, because while the functionality could still be there, you'd have no way of tracking what those macros are, and you really would not remember them. And so not having the screen behind it and the capacity, you know, the little icons and stuff, very much just completely sacrifices like much of the functionality and benefit of this kind of smart device. Back to the review. Product links, as always, will be in the description below. Amazon affiliate links when they're available. Otherwise, it'll just be the default link to Corsair's website. I don't really have affiliate links for them or anything. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe for more tech education links to all of my other Stream Deck coverage. I've made a lot of videos about Stream Decks over the years. Will be in a playlist link in the description below as well. And yeah, kudos to Elgato. Hopefully, we'll see more good stuff like this. And they also just did something with the Elgato green screen, which looks really familiar. So the idea behind Elgato's green screen seems fairly obvious. It's one I actually looked for when I was trying my ceiling hun method circa 2012, but it's very effective here. Remember the pull-down projector screens from grade school? They hung on brackets off the wall and pulled out of a little box that always stayed in place, and the screen stayed perfectly flat. This is the same concept, but flipped upside down. Alternatively, I would also love to see a modification or variant in which the case can also be hung from wall hooks, much like the projector screen I mentioned before, and extended downwards, so I could use the height to still use it while standing, since I don't need a green screen that goes all the way down to my feet. I was thinking I could do this with the screen and maybe make a separate project video, but unless I want to awkwardly hang it not at the top of my wall, but, you know, down a few feet or so, it wouldn't reach down far enough to be fully effective that way either.
I got a surprise package from Corsair today. I had no idea it was coming. I had no idea what was inside of it. I got no warning at all. I opened it and I just started laughing. It was just so absurd. You ready to see it? Okay. This is what I saw when I opened the box. I had nobody told me this was happening. I did get a DM from Elgato on Twitter saying, hey, we're working on something new on the Stream Deck. Maybe you'll get something. That's literally the most I got. That's what I saw on Twitter. And then I got this package, no heads up. And this is the most absurd thing I've ever seen. It's got so many buttons. Look at this. I haven't even opened it yet because I wanted to unwrap it. I took the top off, and the wrapping inside looks so nice that I knew I wouldn't be able to wrap it back up just right. So the sides are cut, but I haven't opened it yet. I have to figure out something fun and just weird that I can do with this other than just filling up the buttons, because that's what everyone's gonna do. Everyone's just gonna fill up the buttons. There's got to be something creative we can do with this massive of a canvas. Like, can we make a game on this? I feel like if you got really creative, you could make like a multi-layer game. I don't know. Either way, let's open this up. It's very snug. There we go. The packaging is beautiful. Ooh. Ooh. Okay, I can already tell one thing they've done new from the last Stream Deck is the cable is separate. It's separate, braided, and it's USB-C. Already looking better. There are a couple upgrades I'm hoping with this other than just the massive amount of buttons. On the last Stream Deck, I hate the stand. The stand is a cheap piece of plastic, and actually I think that's it. Ooh. Ooh. Ooh, this is nice. Ooh. Oh, and it's magnets. Oh, I like this a lot. Okay, so you can do it without this. So you can set it down flat like this, or, oh, that's on there just right too. That's nice. You can see you got a little bit of a notch there for the cable to go right through. These just look so nice when they're brand new. These little LCD like gooey buttons just glow in all these lights I have around me. It's so pretty. Oh yeah, there you go. There you go with that 4K res over there. So you plug it in over here. Yeah, it goes right in that little notch. Or you go through the back of the next stream animation for your Stream Decks. The way I set these up, by the way, is I set the GIFs to be on my Stream Deck home screen, and then I set folders that I needed to get into in the corners so I can just tap them and get into all my commands. But yeah, feel free to download any of those and install them on your Stream Decks. Look, if you're familiar with the original Stream Deck at all, you're gonna be familiar with the new one. It's basically the exact same thing, but with some serious upgrades to the design. But I've been using the Stream Deck since pretty close to when it first came out, and it's become one of my favorite devices for a specific reason, and I want to address something that's very important for new streamers coming up. Usually when I talk about the Stream Deck, I get one of two responses, either a very positive response because it is a really great product, or I get people who say, what's the point? Like, can't you just do that with a, you know, a 10 key, like a $20 10 key or 12 key and macro software? And kind of, yeah, and especially when it first came out, because a lot has changed over the last year or so since the original Stream Deck has come out. It used to be just hotkeys and maybe some integrated APIs with Twitch and Streamlabs and Twitter and a couple other things, but for the most part, it was just a hotkey thing. Since then, they've added a ton of really cool software, including a third-party SDK, so other developers can create their own Stream Deck buttons and commands. And personally, one of the biggest changes that I think has been added to it over time is something called multi-events, essentially multi-step macros. I've done a whole video on how I use that tool to create really advanced transitions that you can't just normally do in OBS, including turning on an animation, having a source come in underneath it, turning off the animation, then actually switching again to another, like to a third scene, so it looks like the text is fading in because it's actually another fade transition. Anyway, you can do a lot of really cool stuff like that since they released multi-action events. I think that's what they're called, multi-action events. But I think when it comes to new streamers deciding on if it's worth buying or not, I think there's something that's really important for people to understand, because while it is a great product, it's what I would call a convenience product, meaning it doesn't do a required thing like a capture card does. If you want to connect your nice camera to your stream, you need a capture card. If you want to connect a 2-PC setup or a console to a streaming PC and you want it to look decent, you need a capture card. This is something that can be done with third-party software and cheap hardware, but there's a catch attached to it because I spent days before I bought my first Stream Deck trying to do that, trying to rig up like an extra number pad to add macros and multiple functions, and I ended up downloading 3 or 4 different sets of software until I found one that worked, and it took an hour just to get one set up right. When you're trying to do something really cool and creative, like make a mind-blowing transition that has multiple steps that are all programmed into a single macro, but programming that macro takes extra time, it can really distract from the creative process. This device is definitely a premium device that you can do with cheap products, but it does it incredibly well. And creating macros is something that only really advanced computer users are able to do properly, whereas a device like this opens the door for anybody to be able to do it, and anybody to be able to do it in minutes. It's as simple as dragging and dropping and adjusting a couple delay numbers, and you have a beautiful macro setup. And you guys know me, you know I love pushing the limits of where I can go creatively. Do I want to add some special code to my alerts? Do I want to make, you know, you got that thing above my camera and my stream with the rotating function that I gave to you guys. I like pushing the limits of what I can do. And if I have a product that allows me to focus 100% on the creativity and less on the actual functionality of it, I'm able to create a much cooler product. That being said, if you are a new streamer and you are on a budget, I would say, and I want to think that Elgato would actually agree with me. I mean, if you're using a really cheap webcam, you're still using the mic built into your headset, and you have 250 bucks to spend, and you're considering, keep throwing this on the ground, I need to just hang on to it, and you're considering getting, you know, a Stream Deck XL, my thought process would be spend that $250 on a Brio and a nice microphone and really up the quality of your stream. Something that's front facing, something that the viewers are going to notice much more than you. And once you have those things in place, get yourself some awesome tools like a Stream Deck. My advice is to always spend your money on devices that your viewers will notice rather than yourself. Now I can drop this. Which leads me to the cheapest Stream Deck that Elgato has ever released, and they're releasing today. If you can't afford an actual Stream Deck, but you want the Stream Deck experience, you want the creative opportunities, it is either $3 a month or $25 a year, and it is Stream Deck Mobile. And it's super easy to set up. I'm sure they'll do a YouTube video much better than I will, but essentially you add a new phone to your Stream Deck right in the Stream Deck app. You download the app on your phone, and it gives you a QR code that you just snap right in your camera. And then it just grabs a profile off your app and you're ready to go. It literally took me 30 seconds to set it up. And look, there it is. Watch this, ready? Did you see that? See the light turn off?
Wow.
Turn it back on, turn this one off. It's very good. It's got the layout of the 15 key with the 3x5, which makes it equivalent to the $150 model, but it's only $25 a year. So essentially the only way to not get your money out of this is if you use this for over 6 years. Plus you can use it vertically, so if you have yourself a phone charger, you go and set this up on the stand so it's charging the whole time, and you got yourself a $25 a year Stream Deck. I think that's a great solution. Very excited about both these products that Elgato are releasing today. I think they did a great job. I do think it is not the first accessory you should buy, but I do think it is a great product that opens the doors for a lot of really creative solutions. Like I said before, if you want to download any of these animated wallpapers that we made before, they're all available in the Designs and Sounds text channel in the Alpha Gaming Discord, link down below to join. And if you have any suggestions, want to stop by the stream, want to ask me any questions, I do stream every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Link to my channel down in the description below. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this helps. And as always, happy streaming.
I watch your YouTube videos out.
My man.
New kill leader.
This isn't the real hairstyle though. This isn't the real hairstyle. That was just an auto-generated name.
Pepe hands, dude.
There's a clip in the end.
I've spent a good chunk of time.
Grounded.
So this next story is really something mainstream media totally ignored. But Raw Story had an article on it and some video on it as well. They say, watch, huge group of armed black protesters march on Confederate monument in Georgia. So, you know, you could see that's what they look like there. It was a lot of people. I'll show you a video here in a sec. This is in Georgia on July 4th. And they're marching to Stone Mountain Confederate Memorial, which is a 9-story sculpture in northeast Atlanta. And it's the biggest Confederate monument in the country. It's basically like this giant shrine to the Confederacy. And, you know, the whole point of these monuments originally was to spit in the eye of the civil rights movement and black folks and to say, like, we have a hierarchy here and know your place. And a lot of people don't know that the Confederate flag that we think of today as the Confederate flag, that was birthed in the civil rights movement. It was a giant middle finger to civil rights and equality. And these monuments are also, many of them are very cheaply made and just thrown up because, again, the point was to say, screw you to people trying to make change for the better. Yeah. So this group calls themselves the NFAC, the Not Fucking Around Coalition. And apparently, a little further down the road were Trump supporters on motorcycles with MAGA flags. So there was no, at least that I know of, there was no fighting, there were no shots fired, and, you know, the peace was kept. So that's definitely a positive thing. Now, Gun Owners of America, the group Gun Owners of America and the NRA, they came out in favor of American citizens peacefully protesting with their weapons because, of course, these groups believe in the right to bear arms. They believe in the Second Amendment. They believe in responsible gun ownership in America, and not a shot was fired at this event. So the NRA is hugely supportive of this. Oh, wait. I made that part up. Gun Owners of America and the NRA said Dickie McGee's axe. They had nothing to say. And in fact, if we ever were to get gun control, it'll be because of stuff like this. Let's keep it real. Like, I don't think at this point that we'll ever get sufficient gun control to really ameliorate the problem of mass gun casualties every year in this country. But if we were to get it, it would be because you have giant groups of black people dressed in military gear marching through the streets holding guns. Because if there's anything that'll scare the pants off of white America, it's this. But interestingly enough, you know, like I said, it was peaceful. Not a shot was fired as far as I know. And it was just a show of, all right, you know what? We've had it. Yeah. With the killing of George Floyd.
All right, we are back.
Are you sure it's from green tea? You like it better?
Same. Yeah, it's kind of like sweet and sour. Different.
And the police brutality issues and now Confederate monuments coming down around the country. Mississippi just got rid of the Confederate flag in their state flag. There's a moment here where people are saying, all right, you know what? Enough. We get it. Oh, you have armed militias too, and you have protesters too with your MAGA flags and whatnot, and your Confederate flags. Well, we have guns too. We have numbers too, and we're flexing a little bit on you right now. So, you know, if you don't like what you see, maybe we change society for the better. You know, maybe we get rid of the Confederate monuments. Maybe we get rid of the Confederate flag. Maybe we fix the police brutality problem and various injustices in this country. And, you know, guns are an interesting issue because I feel like I've gone back and forth on that issue a number of times. Originally being very pro Second Amendment to then being in favor of massive gun control. Now I think I have like a middle path. I think we need some basic gun reforms, but I do overall believe in the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms, and I think that, you know, reasonable, responsible gun owners should not be punished because there are many people who are terrible with the guns who do violence, but I do think there's some sort of a middle path where you could have effective regulation, you could have background checks, you could have bans on high-capacity magazines and whatnot, but, you know, there's a certain point where even I become uncomfortable. So I think I have a relatively moderate position on guns, but between this and if you get some armed Muslim Americans carrying guns, you might actually see a 180 in the government. Whoa, should we say? Did we say no gun reform? What we meant was, see, what happened was, what I think is maybe we got to do some, because we don't like it when there are Mexicans carrying guns, I was going to say. Muslims and black people carrying guns. And actually throw Mexicans in there to boot. If there's some armed Mexican groups too, the politicians in this country be like, whoa, we didn't mean that. When we said right to bear arms, we didn't mean for them. What's going on here? So anyway, interesting story that was not touched at all by mainstream media. I wonder why it wasn't touched by mainstream media. But somebody said it's bigger than any even Black Panther movement that they've seen. So there was some sort of a reawakening in this country, that's for sure, and we're seeing the fruits of it now.
At this point, we have tested more than 39 million Americans. Among those, more than 3 million Americans have tested positive, and more than 1.3 million Americans have recovered. Sadly, more than 133,000 Americans have lost their lives, and our sympathies are with all of the impacted families. And while we mourn with those who mourn, because of what the American people have done, because of the extraordinary work of our healthcare workers around the country, We are encouraged that the average fatality rate continues to be low and steady. And at days earlier this week was actually 90% lower than at the height of this pandemic. Again, it's a credit to the sacrifice.
I don't think this is green tea.
Well. Well. Hey. Yeah. Um. Oh. The valve index.
So about 5 months ago, I made this video showing off what my valve index looked like after a very hard 1,000 hours of usage. Long story short, I had a slew of issues with my index. Some were small issues that were minor annoyances, and others were major issues like the headphones completely dying and my right trigger refusing to work on the knuckles. Well, this is that very same index, just 5 months later. It seems that I was one of the first to receive a consumer index full kit, and over 10 months of almost daily usage, I've encountered some pretty major problems, but I do believe that most of them are somewhat avoidable if you follow the tips that I've learned over time, which is why I'm making this video. I'm hoping that other people's indexes last longer than mine. Plus, I believe I was one of the first to encounter a pretty major flaw in the index's design that will likely also happen to you, deeming your headset unusable, unless you're watching for certain things. So after speaking with hundreds of index owners, using mine for far too much of my life, here are my results with the Valve Index after 10 months and more than 1,300 hours of nearly daily usage. Let me start with the failure that literally happened as I was going to record gameplay footage to put in this video. One of my Index's 2.0 base stations has failed. I got the dreaded red light of death, and now it's up to Steam support to get me a new one. Unfortunately, base stations are practically all out of stock, so ironically, looks like I'm gonna have to use one of these. Luckily, I had a set of base station 1.0s from this Cosmos kit, so I could at least play in VR while I'm waiting for replacement. This problem isn't because of anything in particular, just some people get really unlucky and have to deal with random hardware failures. The sad part is that this is kind of a common problem with base stations in general. They have a reputation for being pretty delicate, and one of the only things you could do is just not touch them. Put them up on the wall and forget about it. I've been decently good about that with mine, but it looks like I just got a bad one. If you do some research or just talk to people that were early adopters of either the Vive Pro or Index, both of which use the base station 2.0s, you'll see that this red light of death happens more often than I'd like to see. And there's really no solution other than send it back. So there's issue number one. Half of my tracking just died. Not because of a handstand and not because of shaken base station syndrome, just it died. Next up, let's talk controllers. So you can see my original controllers have been used so much that the finish is literally falling off of them. I love the knuckles, whether it's VR Chat, Half-Life Alyx, Pavlov, it doesn't matter. Games are usually just better with them. Having finger tracking feels amazing. Actually grabbing guns or objects feels natural, and it's genuinely an improvement to the gameplay experience. It's no gimmick. But the controllers aren't perfect either. Here is what will happen. Not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Your controllers will squeak. All it takes is a little blowing on the trigger or a quick shot of compressed air to fix it, but your controller will squeak and it's going to be annoying. Going along with triggers, there's a very real chance that your trigger, particularly the trigger on your dominant hand, will stop registering any input. That's what happened to my original right controller, and it's the reason for me opening an RMA for it, which Valve did replace it, no questions asked to be fair. I mean, it kind of makes sense. If you're right-handed, you're using that trigger to navigate menus, shoot things, interact with the worlds that you're in. It has to be one of the most used buttons on the controllers, but like I said, you're going to have a range of issues either from squeaks to total failure at some point. Now, I will say that total total trigger failure is pretty uncommon. What is not uncommon, however, is thumbstick drift, particularly on the left controller. In case you don't know what thumbstick drift is, it's where your thumbstick will start losing its tightness and you'll begin having a bunch of unwarranted controller inputs. Eventually, you'll find your avatar or character just slowly moving in any direction without even pressing anything. There are a couple ways to fix this. One of them is by setting your controller dead zones to wherever you stop getting drift, but once you start getting drift, it's only going to get worse. I started at a 10% dead zone, then a couple weeks later, I was at 20%. Now I'm at 30%, losing a massive section of my thumbstick's usability. This again is a controller that is in the process of an RMA. Steam already agreed to send me a new one, so sweet, I guess. That doesn't mean I'm happy about the problem in the first place. So some people get drift quickly on their knuckles. For me, it took 8 to 9 months to start getting drift, but once I got it, it got bad really fast. From talking with others, I think I've devised a general plan to limit the chances that you'll get drift. Just rebind your thumbstick click. It'll likely change between games and will take getting used to, but it seems like the more you click, the more likely that you'll get drift. You know, there's something funny about this RMA as well. Every return request, Valve asks me to send a serial number, but the serial number is located on a place in the knuckles where your hand is always on. And over time, the text that was printed there is completely rubbed off. Luckily, Valve was understanding this matter and went through with the RMA anyways. So you'll notice every problem that I've listed so far is a wear issue. It's not neglect. It's not a matter of not taking care of your $1,000 device. These are all issues that I've gotten from simply using the headset, controllers, and base stations as intended, which sucks. I have a 4-year-old Oculus CV1 right here that works, and I'm onto my second index already. But wait a second, that's right, my second index. Not only did I have to get both controllers and one base station replaced, but the entire headset itself. There's one crippling issue with the index that hasn't started popping up until now for most people, and I think it's mostly because it's a ticking time bomb of a wear issue. But first, let me address a couple things with the actual HMD. First off are the headphones. The audio on the index is fantastic, and certainly best in class for all VR headsets, but you should take care to maintain them. My right ear stopped working in my headset. However, removing the headphone, then cleaning the contacts a couple times, and tightly securing it back to the strap did fix it for a while. Then it happened on the left headphone and I repeated the procedure. It's super easy to do, all you need is a T6 driver and a couple minutes, and if you're having issues with the audio, this should sort it out. I should point out though that my right ear did end up completely failing after about 9 months of usage. Also, one of my biggest problems with the index, beyond just things flat out breaking, was the material of the stock facial interface being pretty hard to thoroughly clean. Don't get me wrong, it's really comfortable, but after 6 months of hard usage, you'll pretty much have to get a new one, especially if your play space is warm or you just sweat a lot. The material will start smelling absolutely awful, and it didn't matter what chemical bath I put it through, it just needed a replacement. I said last time I talked about this that I heard VR Cover was releasing a faux leather accessory, and at the time it was just a rumor, but that has actually launched since then and made my time with the index a much more hygienic, less moist experience. Seriously, sweating in your interface, cleaning it off, then getting back into VR a few hours later to wet, itchy cloth in your face is not a great experience. Now I just wipe off and disinfect my VR cover and voila, everything's nice and clean. If you don't like the pleather feel, you could of course just buy replacements from Valve, and it's not all that expensive. But if you use your headset a lot, you're going to be buying them every few months, at least if you want to stay clean. Especially with streaming in a hot room like I have been, where it doesn't matter whether I'm playing VR chat or pistol whip, I'm gonna be sweating, and it just made my life a whole lot better. But now, the big problem. The index breaking problem. All of the issues so far have been things that you can more or less deal with. You have drift.
What?
I'm about to tell you how to turn this into this. Both of these shots using the same $50 C920 webcam.
So I have.
By the way, huge thank you to the sponsor of today's video, Owns.tv, the one-stop shop for all of your stream design needs, where you can pick up an overlay, panels, camera border, profile picture, and banner. And my favorite part about it being if you pick up an overlay, like for example this one called Rodan, they're all modular. So if you and your entire team pick up the exact same one, you can each pick and choose different portions, and none of you are going to have the exact same overlay. So if you want to make the smart move like many of the community have done, make sure you use the link in the description below to pick up your overlay. That also supports the channel, and make sure you use code ALPHA at checkout for 40% off. Also, just a reminder, I do stream every Monday, Wednesday, Saturday at twitch.tv/Harris Heller, link in the description below. Let's talk about this camera trick. If you saw our last video, you know I am frustrated with the webcam industry right now. We've got just incredible new tech in streaming, audio, lights, control, but for some reason we only get a new webcam like every 3 to 5 years, and they feel like they're a decade behind. And by the way, I understand that there are serious hardware limitations to the typical webcam design. When you try to fit a sensor that small and lenses that small together, it's literally impossible to get that natural shallow depth of field. Not to mention so many comments saying, how come the camera that's in my phone, which is smaller, how come that gets a better image than this webcam that's this fat? And you gotta remember, by the way, the processor in your smartphone is so much more powerful than the processor in a cheap webcam. It's just important to recognize that with the current model of webcam technology, it's not going to be possible to get that shallow depth of field. So in the meantime, or at least until someone brings some real innovation to the webcam industry, here's a way to get some faux bokeh, as we're gonna call it, or basically fake that shallow depth of field like you saw in the original image. I feel like, by the way, post-production Harris here, I feel like I really missed an opportunity here to call the faux bokeh faux-K. So we're renaming the thing. This is called faux-K. Back to the video. Because yes, that was done entirely on a C920 in real time in OBS. So let me show you how to do this. The secret is like stupid simple. Like I'm gonna tell you and you're gonna roll your eyes and be like, why did I not think of that? Step 1, find the camera angle that you want to use. Step 2, take a picture of your empty room from that same angle, preferably on a better camera like your smartphone camera. Step 3, throw this image into free software so you can add stuff like adjusting the lighting, adding those cool LED lights that you've always wanted, or of course, adding that background blur. And finally, green screen yourself in front of this image. Make sure, of course, that you light yourself properly, preferably similar to the lighting of the room that you had, so it really sells that natural matching lighting look. That may have even sounded more complicated than it actually was. So let's do this. Let's go step by step. And the first thing I'm going to show you is a simple version that you can do literally right inside OBS. I set up the webcam exactly where I wanted. And then using my phone, I took a picture of the room from that same angle. Now I used the super ultra wide in the new iPhone 11 and that same ultra wide angle that a lot of modern smartphones have. You don't need to do that, but that gave me a lot of extra flexibility to zoom and crop and rotate and adjust. Now this is what we're going to make our background out of. So the first thing you need to do is install a free plugin called Stream Effects. I'm going to link you to the download page right here. You're going to scroll down, you're going to click this exact link. This is the installer. You don't have to drag things into folders. You just click it, run the installer, and it installs a blur plugin right into OBS. This will not work in Streamlabs OBS. They don't support this plugin package. I'm going to tell you how to do it in Streamlabs after I tell you to do it in regular OBS. Once you have this plugin installed, you go right into OBS, you add that picture you took as a new image source, resize the image to fit properly and be symmetrical. Then you're gonna add that blur filter and go ahead and toy around with the blur strength. Just be careful not to overdo the blur because it will be tempting to crank it. Be strong. You can also add a color correction filter if you'd like to toy around with the darkness or the contrast, maybe a little bit of the hue to give it the color that you want, and then green screen yourself, sit in front of it. You will be in focus, the background will be blurry, kind of like, well, if I zoom this in, look at that, kind of like this. Look how blurry this stuff is behind me. Yeah, that's what it looks like. Now, if you're running Streamlabs, you have to do one tiny different step because you're not going to be able to blur it inside of Streamlabs OBS. Instead, what you're going to have to do is download a free software called GIMP. This is available for both Mac and PC. GIMP is like a watered down free Photoshop. So you're gonna open your photo inside GIMP, you're gonna go to filters, go to blur, go to Gaussian blur. When adding the blur, I would recommend a value between 10 and 16, maybe 20 if the background is really far behind you. I think I used about 14 or 15 on mine. And then export it. Then, same as regular OBS, add that new exported image in as an image source. Go ahead and resize it, add color correction, and then key yourself into it using that green screen. And that's the simple version. However, I know you, and I know, that's not enough for you. You want more. You want lights. You want one of these beams behind you, or maybe some nano leaves, right? Well, the best part about this is because the camera background is so blurry, you can add those things in and it's gonna be much easier to make it look real. So Sam did what Sam does best, and he made some incredible things for you. And because he's here in town this week, I'm gonna have him explain exactly how to do it step by step. Oh, you wanna do it here? You wanna do it like in my chair? You hijacked my stream earlier, that's not enough for you?
Get out of my stream! Get out of my stream!
Whatever, I don't even care.
Sit down in his chair, call out some subs, and he hits me with the broom. Unbelievable. So if you guys want to take this trick to the next level, you are going to need a few things. Firstly, you're going to need to download the free version of DaVinci Resolve from the Black Magic Design website. Again, all links are in the description down below. Then head on over to the Discord where there is a free DaVinci Resolve project file that you can download that has everything set up for you. Inside it, there will be a drop zone clip and 2 LED light clips. Those 2 LED lights are a LifeX beam and a nano leaf. Bring in the image you took earlier and add it to your project. There is a clip called Drop Zone inside of the project. Right click that and select Open in Timeline. Drag and drop the image of your room into the timeline and position it where you want it. If you need to make scale adjustments, use the inspector and adjust the zoom, X and Y parameters. Jump back into the original room template timeline and select the light you want to use and then turn off the other one. Or you can use both if you like RGB and if you want to make your stream go faster. Go to the inspector and use the zoom, rotation, position, pitch and yaw parameters to manipulate the look of the light. If you want to add more lights to your scene, just move the blur overlay up a few layers, copy and paste your light onto the track above, and then do the same adjustments as before. To make this easier, I recommend turning off the blur overlay layer by clicking this button here. If you want to decrease the amount of blur that is affecting the room, select the adjustment clip, go to the inspector and select Open FX. Click on the Gaussian blur filter and then adjust to your liking, but again, remember, just don't overdo it. Next, jump to the color page, select the clip of your room, and adjust the color curves to give your room the look you're after. Finally, export your project by going to the Deliver page, and then using the H.264 preset, export your file. You're now set and ready to add this to your OBS as the background layer for your stream. With that said, I'm going to clear off before Harris comes back with the broom.
Alright, take a shower, I'll be right back. Get some water, do all this shit.
All right, bye.
Why you'll never get a raise. So here's the deal. I would love to see how many of you do this. If you do it, please tweet it at both Sam and I. We'd love to see screenshots, clips of your stream. It would also give us some great feedback so we can see what adjustments most people need to make, and we can talk about those in our stream and give people more tips. Once again, Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, link like on screen and in the description below. I hope this helped. I hope you enjoyed it. And as always, happy streaming.
Are you freaking kidding me? Get out of my stream! Move! Move! This is why you'll never get a raise! Get out of here! Get out of here! What? I'm not doing my Twitter. Okay, summer is done. I'm gonna get off here.
They're throwing things.
Maybe if you understood that, I could help you. There's a man named Greg inside these mines. Besides me, he's been here the longest. Tell him I sent you. Ask him why he's here. I want you to know how widespread the injustice of Markarth is.
Hey, Vanguard, thanks for the follow. Okay.
What do you want? My story, huh? Everyone in Sidna Mine has a tale. Let's hear yours first. When was the first time you felt chains around your
How are you doing? What is NNSS? I don't know what that is.
So you know what it's like to have your life in someone else's hands. Why should they get to decide? Isn't judgment for the gods? Do you have any family? Anyone waiting for you on your
Orange Pony, you're fine. Don't worry about language barriers. Doesn't bother me. Oh, okay. Awesome. Sorry, I'm terrible with acronyms. Absolutely awful. I know who you're talking about. Thanks for joining. Thanks for stopping in.
I had a daughter once. She'd be 23 this year.
You saying hi?